My name is Joey. I've been shooting in New York City for about 11 years now. I moved out from Tucson, Arizona with the hopes and dreams, and very naive, I might add. I work for the Gratis Group. We are a company who designs, manufactures photo, video, and audio equipment. When I first started with the Gratis Group, I was primarily doing the design work and testing equipment and essentially getting a feel for what the consumer is wanting and as far as features can go. And now I'm doing more of the marketing end of it, which I really enjoy. I'm a people person. I like being in front of crowds, and I like lecturing, and I've always been a kind of a teacher-esque type of guy, especially on a shoot. So that's really where I want to get into as far as my professional end of it. Beyond that, I shoot a lot of catalog, editorial, fashion stuff, and if you've seen my website, you get a feel for the type of work that I do. When I moved out here 11 years ago, I was shooting everything. I was assisting everyone, and at the time, 9/11 hit around 2001, and the market kind of went crazy. And I got a job here at B&H working in the sales department. And I'll tell you one thing, it taught me how to become a New Yorker. And you have thousands of conversations throughout the day that are all photography based, and I worked in the lighting department. So I really got to know, not only know my equipment, but I got to read people and find out what the average consumer was looking for, more or less. So that's helped implement my job and underline my responsibilities, and really gave me a good tight grasp of what the average person is looking for and their needs, wants, and budgets and whatnot. So with that, if you have any questions about lighting as well, feel free to email me, or at the end we have some questions. I'll be more than happy to guide you through that process on top of that. Okay, so let's get the show on the road, guys. Essentially, we had pointer trouble issue earlier. Okay, what we're covering today is a little bit different from what we've done in the past. Again, I took out some of the lighting, the ratio slides that we've had in the past, so I condensed that down, but again, I expanded some parts of it. During this lecture, we're going to do a shot discussion, and essentially what they are is they're different setup or schematics of different lighting modifiers. And I show you my shot, I show you a small video clip on the setup of the shot, and then I kind of show you something candid behind the scenes of the shot. And more importantly, we'll be able to discuss how the shot was taken. At that time, if you have any questions, that's the time to ask, how did you get that shot? How was it shot? What did you use? You know, were you in a good mood or bad mood? I don't know. Whatever. Beyond that, we're going to show you schematics of an umbrella, a softbox, and a beauty dish. And again, we're going to show you the schematics, my shot, a little video to reinforce the setup of the shot. And lastly, we're going to do the beauty dish, which we are featuring today. One of our very talented designers over the last couple of years has been working on this beauty dish. And exclusive to Impact, it's a little bit bigger than the Pro Photo Beauty Dish, one of our competitors, but we're quite proud, and I'll show you some images that we did with it. And beyond that, we are going to do our live model shoot with the beauty dish on top of that. So we're going to shoot it with the grid, without the grid, and before we do that, I'll show you some continuous light setups. Okay? Pretty clear, guys? All right. Let's take a deep breath. Let's get going. Okay. First, but let's get into ratios of light. If you take in any of my classes, I always, for lack of better terms, cram it down your throat to start thinking in f-stops and start thinking in ratios. Very important, because we're photographers and we require tools. In this case, a tool is a camera. We have to interpret what we see up here, what we feel in here, and we have to interpret into this camera that we have in our hand. And that's really where we need to start thinking, is in f-stops, okay? We need to know the difference between f16 and 2.8. We need to know the light difference between the light on me and the darkness on you, and know how to expose for it, okay? And we do that by 3 different methods. We have 3 different variables that are going to guarantee a good exposure. And if you took my class last time, I'm hoping you can remember. It's shutter, what's one? F-stop and ISO. Thank you, you guys remembered. Wow, this is going to be easier than I thought. Great. So again, aperture, shutter speed, and f-stop. These 3 variables will dictate how well your images come out or whether you're going to nail that shot, okay? And I've said this in the past too. There isn't a day that doesn't go by where all of us as photographers, as visionaries, we look around us and we're like, I want to get that shot. I want to get that shot. I don't know how I'm going to get it, but I need that shot. I feel it. I love it. I'm dreaming of it. Those 3 variables are going to get you the shot, okay? Aperture, shutter speed, and ISO. All right, let's discuss a little bit about ratios. Clicker trouble. Okay. Essentially, like I mentioned in the past, flat lighting is basically if you have 2 lights on me, both set at the same power, Let's say one's at 50%, the other one's at 50%, both on me, boom. A great example of a good 1-to-1 ratio image is something like a mug shot. Thank you, sir, he remembered. A mug shot. I'm grateful that I do not have one to share with you today, but other than that, just think of a mug shot when you think of a 1-to-1 ratio. Or you can think of small children in front of a very white background. We've all seen kids shot in front of a white background. It's very non-distracting, it's safe, it's clean, it tends to give this airy type of feel, and I have an example to show you here to reinforce that. That's a typical 2-to-1 ratio on a high-key background, and you'll see that as well. Contouring and shadowing, that's something that I really want to underline in this class, especially when we start using the beauty dish. The beauty dish is going to give us directional quality, and I got an image to reinforce that. It's good for scraping light across your subject matter. And when we get our model here, you're going to clearly see, we'll use the continuous light and you'll see it coming across her face. And I think it's going to be a good way to see how lights and darks can work together to kind of tell a story. 8-to-1 ratio lighting is very much like low-key lighting. I use this as a common example, Orson Welles' Touch of Evil. And if you've taken my classes in the past and you haven't seen it at this point, shame on you, okay? You really owe it to yourself to see Touch of Evil, Orson Welles' Touch of Evil, okay? A cinematic adventure, but not to mention a masterpiece as far as lights and darks, okay? Questions, guys? I like that. Okay. Here we go. Typical 1-to-2 ratio lighting, okay? Essentially what we have here is a subject matter. She's standing in front of a white background. White background set at a certain f-stop and the subject set in a certain f-stop. Okay, to achieve this, what we did is we used one large, I want to say it was a large softbox, but it may have been a large umbrella. And essentially that's set at one f-stop, okay? Let me get my light meter. And we're going to do some light meter drills later as well, and there may be a quiz on it. Hint, hint. Okay, so we have our light meter. Boom, we pop the flash on our primary subject, in this case it's the girl. She's set at f11, okay? If we want twice the light on our background, what does the f-stop need to be there?
16.
Thank you, sir. 16, he's correct. Because one f-stop is what? Twice the light. One f-stop is twice the light. And these are the gears, these are how your mind needs to start thinking when you start thinking about light. You need to start thinking in ratios of light, okay? Simple as that. Questions on how this shot was taken? Should be pretty easy. Good. Okay. Now, this is your typical 1-to-4 ratio lighting. Usually I show a black and white print in between to show a 1-to-3-ish, but I really want to show this one because this one was shot with a beauty dish with a grid on it, very much like what you see here on my right-hand side. And essentially what it is, it's nothing more than a directional quality light modifier that takes a little light away from it, but you can see here, as the light cruises through it, you can see how it's very directional as far as its quality goes, okay? And that's how you're going to get an image like this. You can get an image like this if on other grids or maybe a snoot of some sort, but one thing a grid will do, it gives you directional quality, you're not losing too much light, and the fall off is drastic. As you can see from her cheek on that one side, we're losing a lot of light very quickly, okay? Typical 1-to-4 difference of light, okay? If she was shot at 5.6, let's say 8. If that hot spot on her cheek is f8, what is the dark side if it's 1-to-4 ratio lighting?
4.
Thank you. Okay? Does it make sense? Who answered that? Now you? Okay, all right. I was hoping it was you. I know you know. Okay, very good. Essentially, there's a huge f-stop difference between the ratios of light. Okay, we have a hot spot on the model, the same way we have the hot spot on Joey here. The light quality between here and here is drastic, and that's what we're witnessing here. Okay, very simple. Yes, sir?
So, if it's 8, 5, 6, 4, so it's 2 stops difference.
That's 2 stops, or 2 stops is how many times the difference of light?
4.
4, that's correct. That's correct. Okay.
What degree was that?
The beauty dish at?
Yeah.
Beauty dish was probably set at, if you remember, if you took any of my classes, how many degrees above the eye?
20.
About 20 degrees above the eye and about 45 degrees away from camera angle.
Was there like a grid on the?
On the beauty dish? Absolutely.
That's what I was, like
Yeah.
20, 10, or 30?
Oh, the degree of the grid. It's about a 30-degree grid, I want to say. And that's what this is right here. Yeah.
Is that like the most common?
That is the most common. 40 tends to be the Profoto common, but we went just a little bit tighter on ours. Which was trying to get, you know, a little more drastic light out of it. That's it. 40 is a very common grid as far as softboxes as well as 7-inch reflectors and beauty dishes. That's a very good question.
One quick last question.
Yes, please, sir.
It's, the ratio difference is just because of the fall off, not because of another light, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
The gentleman is stating that there's one light, and he wanted to know whether the fall off is coming from one light, from one directional light, and another light influencing it. There is only one light hitting our primary subject, and the fall off is coming from just the loss of light. That is also known as the inverse square law, knowing your fall off, which we're going to cover as well. And there might be a quiz on that. Yes, sir?
It's fall off. It's just because her face is blocking that part.
It is, but keep in mind that you're losing light. If that were F22 or F32, she'd be more lit because the light would want to wrap around at some point. But it's a very good point, and you're absolutely right. Comments, questions? Okay, let's keep going. Now, as far as light meters go, if you're going to be doing any type of strobe photography, you need to understand a light meter. Like, what do I need a light meter for? I can always use my histograms. I can always check it on the computer, especially if I'm shooting tethered. That's all good and well, but, and I've said this in the past, and forgive me if I sound like a broken record, but you need a light meter the same way you need a speedometer in your car. You have an idea what 55 is when you're on the West Side Highway. You have an idea, but you really don't know until you look down at your speedometer. Okay, the same thing with a light meter. You have an idea what your light is, but until you really meter your light source on your primary subject, you really don't know what the light is. Is this going to make you a better photographer? No. Is it going to give you better pictures? No. It's a tool. It's going to help you get into a nice zone, and it's going to get you in the ballpark of what your relative f-stop should be. It's going to keep the guesswork out of it when you start using strobe photography. And you'll see here, once we break for the demo and we start doing our live shoot, you're going to see where we're literally just going to get our stands here, and we're going to start from scratch, and we're going to use a light meter to get us in the ballpark again, so we can get going. I'm not going to get the shots in the first 2 or 3 frames. I'm going to get them in like the 3 or 4 frame. If I get them in the first 2 frames, I did pretty good with my light meter. It's quite common. You take a couple pops, you take a few frames, and then you hone in your exposure. That's what a light meter is going to enable you to do. Now let's go over the nuts and bolts as far as the light meter goes. I forgot my pointer, so forgive me. It's pretty cool when I can do this. So you have your ISO set up on top, okay, and you have your aperture on the right-hand side here. And in this particular case, it's saying 16, f16, and 3/10. Most light meters go on tenths, okay? They're usually gauging it on 16 or f-stop and then so many tenths. Now, it's up to you to determine how many tenths or how crazy you're going to get about reading that. Some people would look at this and they would say, at ISO 100, this is f16 at 1/30. Another guy might say, no, this is f16 and 3/10. Joey would say this is f16, good enough. If you're shooting for NASA, it's f16 and 3/10. You got to be pretty exact. Keep in mind, depending on what you're shooting, 3/10 might make a difference. I stood corrected last time because there's a still photographer that came here that shoots a lot of crystal, and 3/10 makes a lot of difference on a specularity shot if you're shooting jewelry or crystal or anything that's very shiny. So keep that in mind. 3/10 might make a difference. For Joey's work, it doesn't make a difference. Of course, on the left-hand side there's the shutter. Okay? Questions?
3/10 is the third stop.
It is third to stop, sure. So it could make a huge difference. If you're shooting somebody like that girl with the scraping images, the gentleman asked, is 3/10 going to make a huge stop? And he's absolutely right. It is going to make a big difference. If you are shooting specularity, it's a third stop difference. The girl with the image that's the light scraping across, that's not going to make a huge difference. As a matter of fact, it may enhance the image because that loss of light may be the gain. Okay?
So you input the ISO and the shutter that you want, and then you test it for the f-stop?
That's correct. The gentleman asked you first check it, register for your ISO, and then shutter, and then do the test. What I typically tend to do in the studio is I like to shoot everything tack sharp because I'm not a retoucher, and I turn my work over to retouchers, and they want everything tack sharp. I tend to shoot everything from anywhere from 8 to f16 given the choice, depending on how much power I have and what I'm shooting. With that, I always go and prescribe saying, okay, I need everything tack sharp. How sharp do I need it? I'll determine that when we get to the set. Let's say I'm shooting everything at f11, then the first thing I have to do when I start metering my lights is I have to ensure that I'm registering in f11. And that's going to be where I set the camera, at f11. So, you know, we get a model, we pop the flashes, just like we'll do later. Pop the flashes, ensure that I have an f11. And then I usually shoot at 1/125 in the studio if I'm shooting people. It's usually fast enough to catch a blink, catch her hair if it's blowing in the air, and you know, maybe some gestures or whatnot. You know, 1/125 tends to work pretty well for me. Okay? Questions, anyone? Yes?
I just gotta hear myself say it. So 9/10 is a stop, if 3/10 is a stop?
Well, the gentleman made a good point. 16 and 3/10 is a third.
Third.
So what's another third stop from 16? 18. 18, exactly, 18. So it's 18. So that could make a difference on your exposure, depending on what you're doing. Again. And remember, if you look very carefully, what is this meter covering? Aperture, shutter, and ISO. Okay? The three variables that are going to determine you getting the shot or not. All right? Okay. This horrible image that I took off the internet, which I'm proud to say I did not shoot. She's doing everything wrong when metering. Okay? Essentially, she is the subject that's being photographed. Where does the light meter go? It goes on your subject, not over here, you know. It's not on the same plane as our subject either. She's putting it right over here, you know. Although she may be cute, she's doing everything wrong. So when you see your subject matter doing this, you're not going to get accurate meter readings, okay? You want to make sure you take your meter readings right on your primary subject, right on the nose. What I tend to do, and again, you'll see this later, it goes right on your subject, boom. If this were my strobe up there, I'm metering just like this for Joey, okay? It's a rule of thumb. Forgive our girl here. I'm sure she was paid to do this, and I know she knows better. Okay, we had covered the first two. Now beyond that, when you're working with multiple lights, you want to make sure that you gauge your primary exposure on your main light source. So if we have two lights, we have one light up here and we have another light coming back there, you want to make sure that you flag off one of your lights to ensure that both lights are not influencing your light meter reading, okay? And you'll see me do that during our demo as well. So we're shooting this light, we're shooting that light. Unless you're not covering up this light, we tend to use a lot of flags, something like this, just to cover our light up. So we're covering up our different lights and we can isolate the lights from being influenced from different light sources. Not to mention black like this absorbs light really well. And it doesn't have to be a flag, it can be a black gator foam board, and they even sell black reflectors that work really well. You'll find black in general a real help in the studio. Okay. Beyond that, like I said, what do we say? This is nothing but a tool. It's not going to make you a better photographer. It's not going to give you better images. It's not going to get you jobs. This is just going to help you refine your craft. Okay? You don't have to spend a lot on a light meter. We recently bought this from the used department here at B&H, and I think it was like $150. And I love this little monster. It's done pretty good. It's ancient, but it's cool. It does the job, and it doesn't have a lot of bells and whistles, but we use it for testing different units. You know, well, our technicians use it, but I like it. And for $150, they're going to use it for 10 years easily. And more importantly, a light meter, if you invest wisely in a good brand, it'll probably last longer than your camera and computers to come. Okay? Just like good lighting equipment. Oh! Okay, we have a light meter quiz. Kelly, can I get you up here 1 second, sir? I need you to help me set up the light. Who wants to come up? I want you to come up. Yeah, you. All right. Okay. So let's first put it in the right mode. And essentially, on most light meters, they have a little electric arrow that indicates that it's ready to accept a flash. That's usually blinking quite easy. You've used one of these, I'm sure, in the past, right? Okay, so I'm just going to give this to you. We're going to let it pop. Have a seat, sir. And then all I'm going to ask is for the meter reading. Okay? Look at that. First of all, first rule of thumb, he put it on the same plane as the subject, and it's aimed towards the light source, okay? He didn't do what my girl did back there, okay? Oh, you want to do me a favor, press the button again. Did you get a meter reading?
No.
Okay, press the button again, the very top one.
Very top one?
Yep, very top one right up here, sir. Right here. And it should be blinking. There you go, okay. Okay, give me a meter reading.
We got F22 at 2/50th of a second.
And there's no tenths?
Nope.
Ooh, ooh, look at the bottom grid.
Oh, those are the tenths right there, 3/10. So that would be F, I don't know what's
F22 and 3/10. Or what if we're going to bump it up a third?
If we bump 22 up a third?
Yeah. I know you know. This guy's one of the smartest guys that have ever taken my classes. He's been in here before. We have a history together.
Most of my lenses don't go above 22.
Oh, okay, that's true.
Maybe, I don't know.
It'd be like 28, 27. What do you think, guys? You guys don't have good glass, sounds like. No? I think you've done well enough. I put you under enough pressure. Thank you so much. Here you go, buddy. Give him a hand for coming up here, please. Who's next? Okay. You know the routine, and that won't be as hard. Okay? Now I am going to adjust the light, so hang on. Okay, give me a second here. Push the button. There's a button there on top. No, no, the right above that. That one. Okay. First off, he's putting it right on the primary subject, same plane as the subject, aimed at the light source. Give me a meter reading.
It's F16.
Yep.
1/250.
Yep, F16 and what?
4/10.
4/10. Very good, sir. Let me verify this, please. Very good. Okay, we did good. Sorry. Oh, sorry, Kelly. Thank you. I appreciate it, buddy. Give him a hand, please. Come on. That's brave to come up here. Oh, let's get into shot discussion now. And now, at this point in the game, if you have any questions, be very candid with me. You know, and I'll be honest with you. There's no magic in good photography. There's no silver bullet. There's no secret handshake. It just takes a lot of practice, and more importantly, you got to be willing to just look at yourself in the mirror and say, "This is what I need to do it." It's a sport. You have to practice at it. And for some reason, this image has been getting a lot of questions lately, and I kind of want to reinforce it with another image that comes after this and tell you how I got these shots. This was shot in Hoboken several years back for a boutique in Hoboken, and people ask me, which light source did you use for it? And I said, I used the sun. No, but which light source did you use for it? I used the sun. And quite frankly, that's all it was that day. Just the sun, myself, a model, and a camera, and 5 stylists. So why were we able to do this without it being blown out and awful? Because look at the sky. That is a soupy, muddy sky, which is usually a photographer's nightmare, am I right? It would have been really cool. Well, it would have been really cool if I would have gotten a nice dark blue sky. Wouldn't this be a much better shot if that were a violet sky with that water in back of it? I think it would just have so much more. I don't know. For me, artistically, I feel as though that would be such a successful shot. So we went out there, we started shooting around, I realized, ooh, the light's awful, because I like a little punch in my work. Just me. I do agree at times the cloudy sky can be a huge advantage, especially if you don't want anything too specular and you don't want any raccoon eyes. But I always like I like that challenge of working with hard light and using my own modifiers. So we got this out there, we shot it, very simple, and the only reason why it's successful is because I was paid for it. Okay, quite frankly. Otherwise, I'm not crazy about the shot, but it works. Okay, this is a great example and a prime example of making lemonade out of lemons. Okay, because I was such a pessimist this day, and I remember being, oh, we're not going to get it done. We're not going to finish in time. It's hot. It's you know July in the city. It is soupy. It's hot. It's awful, and everybody's sweaty, and everybody's getting a little cranky. And we made lemonade out of lemons. Okay. So that's something that I want to reinforce there. It wasn't my particular kind of light. I didn't like it, but it worked ultimately.
Did you use a reflector there?
Question? Did I use a reflector there? No, I did not. Just raw light from the sun. And you know what? You know, call it a gift from the gods, whether the clouds came and saved me that day, I don't know. But I would much rather have preferred a hard light, and then we would have worked a little bit differently. This one was shot in my backyard, and it's a typical softbox shot. And you can see me, or see the background, how we have it set up. I ultimately will have a girl on there, and we're shooting her. And I kind of did this stupid little video with the iPhone just to show you how simple the setup is. It's nothing more than a box. There's my boy Steve in the back. Go Steve. And I'm going to be sitting here on the next shot here. So you can see how simple that is. Super simple, nice background. That's a rotting couch back there, which I loved as a prop for a number of years until it finally fell apart. And this is me shooting it, okay, so to give you an idea. Very simple setup. It's just one light, model there, coming in, coming out. I think at that particular point I was getting the beauty shots. Now, this is a prime example of dragging your shutter, okay? Essentially what I'm doing is I'm dragging my shutter. I have to make sure that my ambient, the first thing I did when I got out there is, of course, Joey, you have to have everything sharp. So I want an f8. More importantly, I want to make sure that those nice little dapples of light back there are in the shot. And then they're sharp. And then you can see them, they're visible, and they're part of the composition. So I went out there, took a walk. I took a meter reading of the ambient light at f11 for that shutter speed. Okay, so in other words, I have to make sure that I set the camera, all right, for that aperture, for that shutter speed, for that ambient. The next challenge is making sure that I bring the f-stop high enough for the light meter reading when I finally use the strobe on the model. Okay, so that's what you see there. You see, I'm using two lights. I'm using the sun in the background, which is dappling the background, which you'll see, and I'm using a light source, artificial light source in this case, to light my primary subject, which is the girl and the couch. Simple? We get it? Good. Question?
So when you're taking your ambient, you're reading, when you're back there, you're reading the light from the sun.
That's correct.
Right?
When I'm back there, I'm definitely reading the light from the ambient. That's correct.
Right, but the sun,
That's correct. That's exactly it. That's exactly it.
So you point the meter up or just?
I point it up just like this because the sun is up. When the sun is up, yeah, when it's up, you know, or if you really, really want to get, you know that the sun is at a different angle, maybe aim it towards that angle if you're shooting later or maybe past or before noon or whatever, you know. It's very subjective. When in doubt, try both or try it all. Now that would be a typical softbox setup. Even though I totally broke the rules on that last shot, I put it up and down, but I would always start, when in doubt, always when in doubt, start at 45-degree angles from the camera and 20 degrees above the eye. And I said this once and I've said it again. You want the light just a little above your subject because we are Homo sapiens and we're used to seeing light, the sun in this case, coming down upon our subjects. If you have light coming up from your subject, you get this very ghoulish effect, which can be very cool depending on your subject matter. But it's all very subjective. But as far as portraits go and formality goes and the school of Dean Collins and Monty Zucker, you got to have it just above the eye. And that's kind of where I started from it. This is when getting to umbrellas, I have the whole spiel about umbrellas. It's a large surface area, gives a very soft light. Remember, the larger the surface area, the softer the light. Because it's a silvery interior, it tends to be a little more efficient as far as its outthrow of light. In addition to that, it tends to be a little more contrasty. Now, if you notice here, we're shooting with a white background. And in addition to that, see these little lights that are going off on the sides? I have these little lights, and they're the Broncolor lights that I had in Arizona over there. And they're essentially going to give a nice, hard, specular highlight on the side here. And take a look. You'll see the final images come up here. That's Rachel. She did such a good job. Okay.
They're not shooting through the white background?
I am not, no, it's not going through the white background. And you can see here, I'm using 3 lights. I'm using one large umbrella, okay? And then we're using 2 lights coming from the side, and that's what we got. That one large parabolic umbrella, silver interior, is so efficient. It not only lit my primary subject, but it also lit my background. And you can see the 2 kickers on the side of her face, right here on the temple. Those are the 2 lights that were hitting her. Now, if she was shot at f11, and we wanted a little specularity or a little bit of shininess that you see on the sides, what did those lights have to be on the side if she was shot at f11? Thank you. Perfect. That's a 2-to-1 ratio. Very easy, easily done. Questions? There's the other shot. And there we took off the kickers because it was just too much. I don't know, it's just too overkill for me.
So Joey, have you meter your kickers while you flag off your key light?
That's exactly it. Would I meter my kickers while I flag off my main light? Yes. And that's what I was trying to show you before is essentially, oh, that would have been funny. Primary light, we meter, boink, boink, we get a flash. Now what we do in this case, since we had those kickers there, I'm making sure that I'm hiding the light from the meter, and that's what we're doing. And the larger the card, the better. So just so you can isolate your meter in that case, or isolate the light source. It's just a good practice. We all have our methods to our madness, you know, to creating our own art, and there's no right, no wrong, no better, no worse. Just find what works for you. And your typical setup again, and I'm hoping you guys can finish my sentence here. It's going to be set where? How high? Thank you. That's perfect. Now your reflector is going to always change now as far as your subject matter goes, and so will your light. This is not gospel, it's not written in stone, but again, start at 45 degrees, 20 degrees above the eye, it's going to get you at home. It's going to at least allow you to say, okay, all right, I know where I am now. Start there. It sets you back to zero. Now the reflector is going to be a little bit different. That's going to take some tweaking, as you're going to see when we shoot our model here. It's always a little bit different per shot, per face. We're all unique in that regard. And some may need more reflection, some may need less. And whether you want to use silver, gold, or whatnot, that's entirely up to you. Before we go too far along, I kind of want to get into a discussion of umbrellas because I have several opinions there. White translucent umbrella. If you're wondering about which modifier I should buy, I just bought a strobe unit, and I want to do photography, and I want a softbox, I want a large silver parabolic umbrella, I want a Ferrari, you know, I want it all. And that's what tends to happen, okay? We want all the tools. We have to have all our tools. And I know when I first got into photography, especially when you get into the lending library at different institutions, you want to rent everything. You want to play with everything all at the same time. And you realize, well, maybe that's not the way to go because you're not getting the images or the results that you want. What I like about these guys, this is a $10 umbrella. You can either shoot through it or you can use it as a reflective source like this. Now, if you remember carefully, when we were all in school, elementary school, and they always said the school photographer always had two umbrellas like this, and they were always reflective. Essentially, if this were water being thrown into it, it'd be throwing light everywhere. And that's the beauty of this. It's very inefficient. It's throwing light everywhere. So in essence, what it did for our school photographer, it created a very large zone. So these rugrats, when they moved around, he would at least get the shot. He knew he had a 3-foot zone of like, okay, I'm going to get the shot, and he got it. Simple as that. Now beyond that, if you shoot through it, you're losing a lot of light through it and in the back of it, okay? Very inefficient. Now if you really think about it, inefficient light is something that we've already loved. The beginning of the day and at the end of the day are called the magic hour. That is a prime example of inefficient light. And that's what God's giving us. And everybody wants to be shot in that magic hour because it is extremely inefficient. If we all wanted to be shot in efficient light, we'd all like to be shot on July at noon in the city with raccoon eyes, which we all know looks awful. Beginning of the day or at the end of the day is going to give us very pleasing light. Why? Because it's inefficient light. Just like Mary Poppins, okay? Same thing, very same thing. It's very inefficient light. It's scattering the light everywhere. And that's your job. That's what this guy is inherently doing. That's a part of its charm, the inefficiency of it. On the contrast of that, we have a silver umbrella, which is extremely efficient. Just like our large 7-foot umbrella that we were using, very efficient. Very little light loss, no light coming through the back, throws light everywhere. Hard to control, but you get light everywhere. The beauty of something like this, it's silver beaded from the interior. It diffuses the light from the get-go, okay? If this were a smooth silver, inherently what would happen, it'd become more of a spotlight. You know, it would be more of a reflector, if you will. But something like this, it diffuses the light from the get-go. It tends to be a little more contrasty because it's silvery, but because of its surface area, it tends to be a little softer. And again, if you're wondering about which light modifier to go for, start with a white translucent umbrella. You're going to learn how to use inefficient light very quickly, and you'll understand the sweet spot. And again, inefficient light, think the magic hour, beginning of the day, end of the day. Okay? Questions? Yes, sir.
Yeah, going back to
20 degrees above the eye, going back to 20 degrees above the eye, sure.
That's where I have trouble with. I know if I move like side to side, I know where the light is, 10 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock.
Sure, sure.
How do I know when I'm 20 degrees? What am I looking for? What's in the
How are you going to know when it's 20 degrees above the eye?
light will tell me where I'm at.
Well, essentially, you're the artist. You're an artist. The fact that you took time out of your day, a weekday no less, to come here and learn photography, you're an artist. You have a certain passion there. What I'm telling you to do is feel out your subject. Study your subjects. What I tend to do when I have a sitter, I always just look at them. I'm obsessed with them. That's your job. That's what you have to do with every image that you're taking, okay? I can't tell you if 20 degrees is perfect for your subject matter. You need to start looking at your subjects. You need to start studying your subjects. The same way you daydream about getting that shot, that's how you have to daydream about lighting. There's no right, no wrong, no better, no worse. 20 degrees is just a place to start. Maybe it's a little higher. Maybe it's a little bit farther maybe it's 50 degrees. Play with it. This is your artistic license. And I hate to not answer your question, but that's the best answer I can give you, because you need to run with that.
So I'm looking at it up and down, looking at where the shadow is.
Sure, and shadows are very subjective on top of that. Everybody has a time and a place for a shadow. I think shadows are necessary in all imagery. It helps essentially give definition. We're photographers. We are in a two-dimensional plane, and it's our job to make it look three-dimensional. Let's face it, that's what we do. And how do we do that? Light and focus. And with what variables? Shutter, aperture, and ISO, okay? Any more questions? Yay. This is a beauty dish example, and the guy who shot this, I don't know why he included the makeup shot, but something that we did end of last year on top of that. And it shows some examples of a beauty dish that we used. And this is one of our competitors' beauty dishes. And it did pretty good. And when I finally shot with ours, I liked it much better. That little light that you see to my left, that's just nothing more than a fluorescent light that I keep on most of the time when I'm shooting, because it helps me focus. And there's nothing more frustrating when you're shooting and the lens is bouncing back and forth. It drives you crazy. And me, crazier. Okay? And you'll see here the results. See? It's a little more specular. It's right above the camera plane. Very easy. Nothing fancy. And our retoucher went black and white with it and then dropped out the background. And that was essentially the orders from the salon in this case. Okay. Where's my clicker?
So when you went to light up a white background, what do you use a reflector on it or a variable?
When I go to light up a white background, what do I use on it? Most of the time, nothing. I just use one light.
Just one?
I use one light usually for my high key. Because what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to use the efficiency of my light modifiers. If I were shooting Joey right now, and this is a nice white wall, I would set the umbrella up about right here. And I'm right below the umbrella in this case. And I'm shooting Joey. I'm depending on two things. It's a white background. It's highly reflective. So it's going to throw light back at at me, at the lens in this case. This is a silver beaded umbrella. It's extremely efficient. It's almost like a mirror, but it's a little more, it's a lot larger, so it's got a larger surface area, which means it's a softer light. It's silver beaded, so it diffuses the light from the get-go. And that's it. I tend to use only one light, and if you ever want to learn that technique, there are a million ways that Dean Collins, this I suggest you write down. Dean Collins was a master of using one light and making it look like 3 to 5 different lights. And he used nothing but reflectors and mirrors and whatnot, an extremely efficient way of throwing light back at your subject and background, if you will. Okay? And these are all techniques, no right, no wrong, and sometimes you don't get what you want, but you got to play. Avedon? Avedon, Richard Avedon used one light, absolutely, a master. And if you don't know who Richard Avedon is, I'm leaving right now. No. Okay, all right. Okay, so all my beauty dish setup. Oh, that's what I want to explain. You can see it's just above the camera there, and very simple setup. This is exactly the way we shot it for that salon shoot that you see here. Let me go back here. Oh, darn it. Just take a look at this again, and I'll bounce through here. It's literally, I want to say it's maybe a foot away from my head in either direction, just a foot up and a foot forward. I'm pretty sure that's the way we set it up. And there's Kelly, my man, on the right-hand side there. And again, my focusing light. And see, this, there's Hector. See, okay, yeah, that's about right. Yeah, about a foot up and a foot front. And that's the only light that I used that day. Very simple. Okay? And again, just a simple setup. One thing about a beauty dish, though, they tend to be very much like a shower head. In that regard, that's what the grid is doing. Without the grid, it almost mimics a shower head. Am I right? If that were if I were the Jolly Green Giant, this is what my shower head would look like. Okay? It would throw light everywhere. In this case, light everywhere. And if there were water channeling through it, imagine it just going shh everywhere. And that's what essentially what that beauty dish did in that setup there. It's efficient in that regard. There's no light loss through the rear, just throwing the light everywhere. Now when we add a grid, I said this before, we get directional quality. Okay? So it kind of gets that nozzle and puts it into a nice refined squirt of water. Question?
Was that background retouched to white? A black background?
The background was retouched out, yeah.
It didn't come from it.
No. That was the retouchers. That was the orders of the owner. And I basically, I do light and focus when I get into a shoot. I'm not a retoucher. I don't do hair and makeup. I don't fix cars. I'm not a roofer. I'm not a plumber. I do light and focus. That's it. And I usually hand over my images to a retoucher or the owner or whoever I'm working for that time. You had a question?
Yeah, if you were photographing Joey using one light, how far away would he be from the background? Would he be 6 feet?
Very good question. Very good question. If I were photographing Joey with one light, how far away would I be from the background? Depends what I'm going for. If I'm doing a full length, a minimum of 6 to 8 feet, minimum. And you want to be just a little above your subject a little bit at that point. You want to make sure that the camera angle is about 20 degrees because you want that shadow to fall. Just like you see my shadow back here, see where it's falling? If this light were directly in front of me, my head would still be there, but the camera would be up a little bit and you wouldn't see the shadow as much. Now in this case with the salon shoot, she was about 3 feet away from the background. And I wanted a little bit of that background coming back. It was a little darker background than I wanted, but we lightened it up just a bit. But if you're shooting full length, minimum 6 to 8 feet. If you're shooting a 3/4 or a headshot, 2 to 3 feet is usually pretty good. Usually. Very good question.
What lens did you use
What lens did I use for which shot?
for this shot?
For the beauty shot?
Yeah.
The beauty shot was shot with a 24 to 70. Tack sharp lens, I love it.
Beauty dishes, depending on the size and I guess the brand, what's the sweet spot on the distance to the subject that the beauty dish should be, either for a headshot or full length?
Okay. The size. The question is the size of the beauty dish, and the manufacturer.
Well, I'm just
Okay. You want to know what's the difference of the beauty dish?
What's the sweet spot of the distance from the dish to the subject?
What's the sweet spot between the distance between your subject and the beauty dish? There isn't. You got to play with it. You got to play with it. I wish I could say, this is it, this is gospel, but every subject matter is different.
Depends on the nodal point of the lens.
That's a good point. Depends on the lens as well. She makes a very good point. Depends on the lens, your focal length, what you're shooting. Again, and I say this again, the brush is in your hand. Paint whatever you want. Run. Okay? You know, I wish there was a silver bullet, but there isn't. No. These are light modifiers. These are nothing but tools. They help you modify the light that you're working with so you can get the images that you want, that you're desiring. It's not going to make you better. It's not going to make you worse. It's just going to give you desired effects. The same way you give a hammer to a framer, he can build a house. You give a hammer to me, I'm going to get a fat thumb. Okay? They're just tools. And as far as manufacturers go, there's a lot of people who buy into systems because they feel as though, well, that brand's better, this brand's better, and that camera's better, Nikon's better than Canon, and Hasselblad is better than them, and the Leaf back is better than the Hasselblad back. You know what? Best advice given to me was, second best advice, it's not the song, it's the singer. Okay? Let's move on. Oh, I forgot to. Oh, we're doing a quiz and I just gave the answers. Okay, who wants to come up and answer this? This one's an easy one. Come up. This one's an easy one. Have a seat, buddy. And a reflector, you'll find it quite helpful.
Okay.
Okay, what is the big three and describe each, please?
You have ISO, shutter speed, and aperture.
ISO, shutter speed, and aperture. Tell me what each of the items do.
Okay, your ISO controls the sensitivity of your film or your sensor.
Yep.
Sensitivity of light coming to you.
Mm-hmm.
Your shutter speed also controls how much light comes to the camera by how fast and how slow the shutter.
When you think of shutter, do you think of, I'm looking for one word.
Speed.
No.
No.
Time.
Oh, yeah.
Time.
Yeah. How fast?
How fast? How much
and
time are you
your
exposing
shutter
for?
is open and your
Aperture?
Aperture is controlling the opening of the lens. How wide and how open
That's correct.
it's going to be.
And now
so
how
that's
wide and how close determines what?
your depth of field.
Oh, Ron.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Very good, sir. And for him to come up here, and that's good. I like that. That's awesome. Says a lot about you, guy. Very good. As he said before, aperture, shutter speed, and ISO, the three variables. And I'm cramming this down your throats because these are very important. You want to shoot manual. You want to get the shots that you want. These three variables you have to master. And you got to start thinking in ratios and f-stops. Very, very, very important, okay? Ooh, okay, now we got to get scientific, or ish, scientific-ish. Essentially the inverse square law, let's just define this. And we've all heard this. It tends to be a four-letter word in photography. Some people get it, other people don't. Yeah. I have a very strong science background, and even I don't practice this. It's something that I inherently feel, though, and I'll show you here through a couple of slides of how I think that you guys should be thinking about this. You know, let's look at it. Let's break it apart. Okay, according to the law, the power of the light will be inversely proportional to the square of the distance. Okay, so if we get 2, we square it, we get 4. The inverse of that is 1/4, or a quarter, not half. Simple as that. That's how we're going to think of light. Okay? Now, that's textbook definition. Let's go into a more layman's terms. Okay, again, quarter of the light. Remember, look at 2 on the top. You get 2, you get 4. The inverse of that is a quarter. The bottom just underlines it. All right? So it's a quarter of the light at that point. This is how I want you to start thinking about it. And this is kind of the way I think about light. I think about it in these terms. I know that if I move my light a little bit this way or a little bit that way, it's going to make a large difference in my exposures. Simple as that. It's knowing fall off. It's knowing that when I move 2 feet, I'm losing a quarter of my light, but I'm also losing what? F-stops, or I'm gaining F-stops. Okay? We're thinking in F-stops now. When you start setting your camera to these different variables, you found your shutter, you know the aperture that you have to shoot at, you know your ISO, and everything's perfect, but I cannot get that light in an f8. As opposed to readjusting everything and starting all over, why not just move the light a little bit closer or a little bit farther to achieve the f-stop that you're trying to meter for? That's the inverse square law. That's knowing your fall off of light. Okay? Now let's do a little example here. Why don't you come up and help me? Okay? All right. We're going to do a little example here. I'm going to get a 20-degree grid. Okay. When we put this light source, when we put this grid in this reflector, alrighty. Okay. Oh, it's already plugged in. Very good. All right, I'm going to have you fire this when we're ready. Okay. Okay, now, where's that remote? Okay, I'm going to have you fire this when I ask you to, okay? Now, does the grid look like it's on my face? Can you guys see the little light on my face? Little spot? Yeah? Is it? No? Yes? Okay. Because I can't. All right. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to show you very easily how quickly we can change our light. Super, super easy cheesy. Okay, taking a light meter reading, okay, and the goal is, we're in the studio right now, Joey has to do a headshot, and we want a 5.6. Give me a pop. Okay. We're getting 11 and like 3/4, way too much light. At this point in the game, what I would do, since we're so off, let's just bring down the light a little bit. And I'm going to show you my technique.
Double the distance between you and the light.
If we double the distance, exactly, that's it.
I would flag the kicker.
You can flag the kicker.
That's on? Right
No,
there?
no,
That was on.
no,
I thought I saw it fired.
no. I hope not. Okay.
Yeah.
So what I do is it on? No, it's not on.
It is.
It is. Okay. Now it's not. Okay. When in doubt.
It probably wasn't affecting it.
No, I'm sure it wasn't. We drop down the light a little bit, so we want a 5.6. Our goal is to get a 5.6 here. Okay. Give me a pop. It's 8.5. Getting pretty close.
Now if you go half the distance from the light, you get that
We're going to have that 5.6. So let's do this. Either we can move Joey or we can move the light. Let's move Joey. Okay, back of the class, Joey. God, how many times I've heard that. Okay, give me another pop. We're at 8 1/3. We're almost there.
It's going to get slower from here, though.
It's going to drop off quite a bit. Watch. 5.6. It's 5.6, so it's still 8. Still 8. So at this point, we're off a stop. It's 5.6 and 9/10 right now, okay? Which is 8. Somebody want to do me the liberty of pushing back that? Well, I'll have my guy do it here. Just right back on the same plane. There you go. That's probably, yeah, that's probably you do it. Yeah. Why don't you aim the light source at me, sir? Very good. Okay. Okay. Give me a pop. What does that say? 5.6. That's the inverse square law at work. Okay? We found our variables. All we did was move the stand, and then we got a perfect 5.6 on the meter. All right? Super easy. Okay. And you can see we did it from scratch, just like Mom used to buy. Okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. At this time, let's take some questions, because I know that we are pressed for time, and I think this is the end of the presentation. Oh, it is. No, at this point, best advice was given to me is understand your ratios, know your equipment, okay? Know your equipment, know your equipment, know your equipment. It's going to keep you from gathering beads of sweat when on an assignment. Beyond that, discover your process in making your art. This is why sometimes I always get a little vague in answering your questions, because you're artists. You're here at the middle of the day because you want to invest in yourselves. That's why you're here, okay? You're artists, you're passionate. Follow that. I've been working on a glossary at the Impact website for the last 2 years, and we're up to 10,000 definitions at this point. Very soon we're going to be publishing it on impactstudiolighting.com. I'll hand out my card when we're all done here, and please check it out, because it'll be a Bible of photo glossary terms and whatnot. So if you don't know the difference between a Quaker clamp and a knuckle, you'll know very soon. So let's take some questions. Go ahead, sir.
Do you know which road to take, the strobe or the continuous light?
How do you know which road to take, whether it be strobe or continuous light? Very good question. Let's start with me. I tend to shoot with strobe 99.9% of the time for one reason, is that I need a gas pedal. Strobes give you a gas pedal of different variations of light. I know I can, at 1 minute I can shoot at 2.8, or I can shoot at f32 if I have to, or at 5.6 if I need to. It allows me a gas pedal to determine how much depth of field I need. Unfortunately, with a continuous light, you are bound by the ambient light. So as much light as it's giving off, that's how much light you're going to get. What we tend to do at that point, instead of playing with the power of the light, we play with our ISO. And I notice a lot of photographers who are doing that. They're like, don't worry about it, we'll just pump it up to 10,000 ISO. That's okay if that works for you. But when you're printing up a 6-foot poster, everybody wants to see everything at 100 ISO. I have different opinions about pumping up the ISO too high, but I do know that technology is taking care of that. But that's the only limitation, is you are bound by the amount of light that you're going to essentially get. You have one speed when you're working with a continuous light. it's on or it's off. We're going to play with that in a little bit just to give you an idea of how much, how to throw the light. But you'll see that that's all the light you're going to get. And if that's all the depth of field you want and that's the shutter speed you want to shoot at, then it's good for you. Then stick with it. If you want options, you've got to go with strobes, quite honestly. Other questions? I know somebody else said. Yes, sir.
So that's why I meant this with the inverse square law was helpful.
Inverse square law, yes.
It showed me a lot. But now when I move the light back further, now my light source is harder.
A little bit, but keep in mind, if you have a light modifier on it, if the light source is pulled farther, then the light is going to become more hard. And it's a very good inquiry. But if you're using a light modifier, it's going to be a very subtle difference. Very subtle difference, quite honestly. This is why I tend to go with umbrellas. If you use an umbrella, why is this thing so good? Inefficient, that's right. Because you're not, that little bit of inefficiency is going to be the charm at the end when you have to pull the stand back. That's why. It's going to be a little more fall off. It's going to be a little more inefficient light. I think it's going to be a little more pleasing to the eye.
Don't go crazy.
Don't go crazy. If you want to overthink it, then by all means go ahead. Keep yourself up at night, just don't call me. Questions? Yes?
I guess I have a question more about your process.
My process.
And more about your studio work.
Okay.
Like whether or not, so would you use like V-flats when you're setting up your studio and your lighting? And so that would make an impact on how your lighting, what your lighting.
That's
your
correct.
lighting
And the question is how my process in using V-flats in the studio, and how does that change, how does that affect my lighting and essentially the end result? Ish. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, but I tend to use a lot of V-flats. I don't know if you saw them in one of the videos. A V-flat is nothing more than a 8-foot foam core, and what people tend to do is 8 foot by 4 foot, and what people tend to do is they tape them together. So now you have this V. Imagine it's 8 feet tall, 4 feet across. So now you have 8 feet of V-flat to play with. And essentially what a lot of people do is they either flag light off of. One side is inherently black, another side is white. So you use it as a very large reflector or as a source for subtracting light. Very, very common in most studios. You can throw a light into it and use it as a background light if you want. It's a good way to get a bare bulb, something that we have here, shoot it into a V-flat, and that'll light your whole background. Or a lot of people just tend to use it as a light modifier on top of that. There's a million and one uses to use a V-flat. Sorry? Not giving away V-flats today, sir. No, no, they're too big and too cumbersome. But if you go to the set shop, they're rather cheap. Everyone should have at least one V-flat. And if you don't have 8-foot ceilings that'll support it, just cut them in half, and now you have 2 for the price of 1. Very common.
Like backgrounds?
You can use it as backgrounds, absolutely. They are used for everything and everything, just the same way you use a butter knife as a screwdriver. I mean, there's a multitude of uses.
You work with non-professional models or subjects who are...
Do I work with non-professional models or subjects? In Arizona, I did, yes. In Arizona, I shot 180 weddings, and I'm still alive. So that was very tough. It helped me learn how to corral people, and I like to say I did pretty good weddings. But when I got out here to New York, I told myself I was just going to do fashion, because that's really where my heart's been. And I like editorial, catalog, that kind of stuff. And you know, that's where my artistic drive is. For the most part, I do not work with non-professional models, for the most part. Although every once in a while we'll get a girl that wants to be a model, so we kind of like work her into something. And sometimes that girl might be good for a catalog that might be good side money later down the line, you know, so you don't have to hire such a high-end girl. But professional models, just like professional photographers, they have a job, they show up, they do it, they leave. That's it. Yes?
What is the magic behind the beauty dish?
What is the magic behind the beauty dish?
What is the difference using beauty dish and or a softbox
and a softbox?
Or an umbrella?
Mm-hmm.
And another thing is a mola. I know they produce a beauty dish which is very...
It's got concentric circles inside.
Much more
yes,
deep
much deep,
than
yes.
This one, and if that is usable for what? What is the difference?
The question is what's the charm behind the beauty dish, and what's the difference between using beauty dish and a softbox? In addition to that is compare it to the Mola beauty dish. We'll start with the Mola first. I have a Mola. I I got rid of. No, actually, we did get rid of it. Yeah, we got rid of it. Don't have a mola anymore. Molas are very nice for two reasons. One, they have surface area on the surface area that can't be matched. It's large surface. They make an assortment of different sizes. I want to say the largest one is about 48 inches. Correct me if I'm wrong. But in addition to that, they have these waves on the interior. These waves catch the light. The very same way, again, when I say waves, think water in this case. The waves, the light catches it just like water, and it's spilling it onto another level. So what is it doing? When a wave hits a rock, what is it doing? It's diffusing it, okay? And that's what these waves are doing. If you can, go down to the lighting department here at B&H, and you'll see the mola. It's got waves in it. And I want to say water. The light is catching each wave, and it's diffusing it just a little bit. Remember, light is photons. These can be measured. This is a unit of measurement. It is a unit of energy. So it's hitting the waves, diffusing it, and throwing the light outward. Now, mola makes deep dishes, and they make very wide dishes, and they make a very shallow dish. The very deep ones, if you want throw, if you need throw. I would use a very deep dish if I were shooting somebody on a rooftop, and I wanted a little more hard light, and I need a lot of throw. You know, in this case, let's say I'm shooting a boxer. I'm shooting a box. This would be a great shot. Imagine this. Imagine this, a boxer on a rooftop. You know, he's oiled down, you know, a little sweaty. He's got his boxing gloves up. The sun's going down, and you want nice, like a shadow coming across him. I would use a mola deep dish for that, because it would create a hard, little more drama. It's a good way to underline it, okay? It would give us probably a little more dramatic shot than that one shot I shot with a girl with the light scraping across from her. Probably be a little more dramatic. Because he's oiled down, he'd be gleaming in different areas. It'd be kind of a cool shot. Now, compare that to a softbox. Softbox are inherently, I always like to bring back the masters, the old masters who used to paint. Rembrandt, Vermeer, they used window light. And a softbox is nothing more than a window if you look carefully. The charm behind it, it's a very efficient light source because there's no light loss. It's held in through there. It bounces around this box here. It gets thrown through an interior baffle, which diffuses it, and then a secondary diffuser, which we call the exterior baffle, diffuses it even more so. Now, if you think about this, it also has these lips here on the side. They help give it a little bit of directional quality, okay? So what we have here is a very soft light source with directional quality. The larger the box, the softer the light source, and that's it. As simple as that. Is it good for every shot? No. Do I use it all the time? No. Is it going to make you a better photographer? No. It's just a tool. Use it wisely as you deem necessary. Make it your tool if you want to. I use everything, but quite honestly, given the choice, you know, and if I'm on a pinch, this is my monster. I'm taking this everywhere, on every job, just in case. Just in case. So, because we all get into these moods or we get into these sets and you start shooting and you realize nothing's working. You're going crazy and I'm not getting my shot. Go back to the basics. Question?
How do you compare the umbrella to the soft?
The beauty dish?
Can you use them in a similar way?
I guess you could. You could, depending on your trick. But keep in mind, they're two different monsters. I mean, you're comparing a, for lack of better comparison, you're comparing a 72 Nova to a Ferrari. You know, this is your 72 Nova, very inefficient, gas guzzler, throws light everywhere. You know, smog everywhere. This is very efficient. This.
You shoot through the umbrella.
You shoot. I tend to shoot through the umbrella quite a bit.
And does that tend to simulate the beauty dish?
No, no. A lot of people say that if you use the question is if you use an umbrella, will it simulate a beauty dish effect? A lot of people tend to believe that they use a umbrella like this as a beauty dish, you're going to get the same results. It is an ish in that case. If this were a 33-inch silver umbrella, you could say, wow, it's pretty close in size. You know, it's going to give me a similar effect. Is it going to be the same tool? No, it's not the same tool. In that case, that's where I tend to get a little technical because they are not the same light modifier. Is it going to give you similar results? It may, depending on your subject matter, but they're just tools. They're just tools. Again, it's no better, no worse.
This dish is focusing more light directly.
This dish can focus more light with the grid on it. That's correct. Now, if you put the grid on it, now as you can see this, you can see, I don't know if you can see how well this is. Can you see how the light's going through it and not? This is giving you directional quality. This is not.
But even without the dish, what
What do you mean without the grid?
without the grid,
Yes.
what does that dish do?
Think of it, if I'm the Jolly Green Giant and this is my shower head. The water's everywhere.
It's spreading.
Everywhere. It's almost uncontrollable. But what's nice about it, it's efficient. There's no light loss through the rear. Light's going in one direction. It's catching this little disc in the center. It's being thrown back into the dish. Shower head.
He has also a more stronger fall off, right?
A
the
stronger
center
fall
part
off, that's
is
correct.
Stronger than the side.
That's correct. That's exactly it.
So
Yeah.
the umbrella is a less efficient shower head.
That's correct, if you want to put it in those terms, absolutely. Yes. An umbrella is less efficient shower head. That's well put. Yeah.
Does it accentuate or reduce like flaws in the face? 'Cause I only
Does
see
it
with-
accentuate or reduce flaws in the face?
You only see with like models.
Very good question. This accentuates flaws in the face, big time. Big time. We have, you know, there's often we'll shoot a girl, and we're shooting somebody right now who's a beautiful young lady, and she hates every image that we shoot of her because I'm shooting everything tack sharp, you know, and everything is, you know, the makeup is very honest, and we're using light modifiers that tend to be a little more gritty. So she looks at herself, she's like, ah, but you know, you got a good retoucher, and more importantly, in my world, you got to have everything tack sharp, and some people, they're not, you know, some people just aren't comfortable looking at themselves. You know, it's just the way it is. And I tend to not, you know, just now that we're talking about that, I tend to not show our subjects what we're shooting on top of that. I like to give them my edit afterwards, you know, and that's just my 2 cents. Is it a bit controlling? Hell yeah. But that's just me. I like to show people the end result usually, or a couple end results, you know, as far as workflow goes. Yes, sir?
When might you use an octa?
When you use an octabank. When you need a lot of coverage, when you use an octabank, you need a lot of coverage and you need a very soft light. Now the octabank came about, and now correct me if I'm wrong, and please somebody verify this. Back in the day when Dean Collins and Monty Zucker were shooting portraits, they used softboxes. And I don't know who did it first, whether it was Monty Zucker or Dean Collins. They came up with the octabank design because they wanted a different shape in the eye. They wanted a different little specular highlight in the eye. And as opposed to a square specular highlight, they went with a more pleasing round specular highlight. It does tend to mimic an umbrella, but again, what's different about this than an umbrella? This is a much more efficient. Less light loss, a little more directional quality, okay? And that's why it tends to be different than umbrella. But the shape's the same in the eye. There's somebody here with a question. Yes, sir?
Yeah, I'm shooting out of my apartment. My apartment is about 8.5 feet high.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine the stage, right?
Sure.
It's 23 by 12.
23 by 12, his
Right.
apartment, okay.
And then there's a hallway that leads into the living room, dining room, which is where I shoot. And I tend to stand in the hallway and shoot that direction. I have 2 strobes. And
The guy has an apartment on Park Avenue and 5th, I'm assuming. And ends up essentially going in the hallway because of lack of space.
imagine this being the hallway.
Right.
And that's the living room, dining room, and it's 23 feet.
23
by
feet,
12.
23 feet by 12, and you tend to go in the hallway.
And where
That,
the screen is exactly where I put my, my roll.
your roll of paper. That's quite common. That's quite common what you're speaking of. That's actually a good space. You can do a lot with that space, and I'm sure you've done already. You know, one of my first studios in Tucson, it was only 600 square feet, and to get a full length, we'd have to open the door and go in the hallway to get the shot. You know, especially if you're shooting with a 70-200 lens, you know, and you're like, I'm in the hallway, but hey, radio slaves in the hallway, pride goes out the window. But I think you got a very good setup. What's the question?
Yeah, how can I use that space, the best way? Like, I noticed that when I'm using my strobes, I
Mhm.
have to keep them about, I would say maybe 8 feet away from my subject.
Right.
Otherwise, it bleaches them out, or sometimes I end up turning my strobes towards the ceiling, and I bounce the light off of that.
The gentleman is asking how can he use his space more efficiently with the equipment that he has, and I think we answered this question before. Let's use V-flats. If you get V-flats, I think that'll be an extremely efficient way of using it. It's The Set Shop. It's literally called The Set Shop. If you go to their website, they're on 23rd now or 21st. I might be wrong, can't remember. But you can get a good deal on V-flats there. Also, an assortment of different types of V-flats that may be better for your particular space. But as opposed to bouncing off the ceiling and you know, having it too harsh and bleaching out your subjects, why not just bounce it into a V-flat? I think it'll be a more, I think you'll enjoy the fall off better, and I think it'll be a much more pleasing light.
What is the name again?
V-flats is called it's called the Set Shop. It's basically the Set Shop. It's basically nothing more than a grip store. It's tape, if you want gaffer's tape, backgrounds, paper, V-flats, ladders, everything but a camera. Questions? Yes?
In answer to, I mean, in reference to what you just talked about, how about turning down the strobe?
You can turn down the strobes,
or neutral density?
but often, what light modifiers are you using, sir?
Yeah, and I do turn them down
All the way. I had a feeling you were going to say that. Yeah, see, so he's already at 0. He's already at 0, and you're still getting blown out. You're still blowing out your subjects. What type of light modifier are you using? No. Is it umbrella? Is it softbox? Is it a horse? Is it a pony?
It's a softbox.
It's a softbox.
Yeah.
How big is the softbox?
I want to say
24 by 32?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'd probably go bigger. Go with the V-flats. A 24 by 32 softbox is good, but you need a little distance.
Yeah.
Greater than 8 feet.
Or the ceiling.
Use the ceiling, that's nice, but now you're getting a light that's bouncing off, and you might end up with a raccoon deal, depending on how inset the eyes of your subject is. You know, and a V-flat will at least allow you to modify the light. Even if you throw the softbox into the V-flat back at your subject, try it out. You'll end up with such a sweet, soft light.
I have an 8-foot ceiling, and I've had, and there's a white curtain on the window behind. I've had good luck bouncing off the ceiling with reflectors, and that's it.
So you have an 8-foot ceiling, and you're bouncing the light off the ceiling with reflectors.
Bouncing the light off the ceiling,
And then utilizing reflectors to throw it back at your subject. That is the same method that Dean Collins has been preaching, and he's turning over in his grave right now. God bless his soul. That's a very, very smart way of, and it's a very efficient way of using light. Keep it up.
I invented the wheel last year.
No! And he invented the wheel last year, exactly. Well, kudos. So what we're going to do is we're going to, essentially we have a model here. This is Christina. She's been kind enough. She's a New York City model here, and we've worked together in the past quite extensively. And beyond that, she has lended her talent here so we can get an idea of how to mold the light. We're going to start off with a continuous light, and I want to show you how quickly the fall off can go off that light. But more importantly, I want to show you the beauty dish at the very end. And we're going to do a classic, classic headshot. We're going to do a beauty shot, and then like a catalog shot off the beauty dish, okay? So 3 different deals. This is a working class, guys, so pretend you're at home, but don't take off your shoes. Get comfortable and ask as many questions as you can, please. This is the time to do it. If you have if you want to know the difference between lighting, or why am I doing this, why am I doing that, please ask, okay? Because we're going to start this with nuts and bolts. Essentially, all we did is we're starting off with a continuous light here, and we're going to do this off the sweat of our brow, as they say. Okay, so let's start off with the continuous light. Christina, let me have you scoot over just a little bit here. Okay, and have a seat. So Christina, we'll pretend that Christina just got it at our studio, and she is in need of a headshot, we'll say, okay? Now, we're first going to start off with a continuous light because I want to show you how effective or non-effective a continuous light can be. So this monster right here, just to give you a shameless product push, this is the Octagon 9. Essentially, it's designed by Impact. We designed this monster about 1.5 years ago. And it's nothing more than 9 fluorescent tubes inside that are daylight balanced, that give a very soft light, and it's encompassed within an octabank. That octabank has a silver beaded interior. We all know what that does. At the same point, it has a large surface area, okay, so it's very soft. And more importantly, because it's a softbox or an octabox at this case, it's very efficient, okay? So it's in a very efficient light source. So now with that, now it's a continuous light. And you know what I said about continuous lights earlier? You're bound by the number of light, the amount of light that it inherently already has. This particular monster does have a bit of a passive gas pedal. In this regard, it has different switches that allow you to divvy up how much light you want on or off. So a very passive gas pedal can be kind of effective when you're shooting, but it's still going to be a very limited range of what we can do with it, okay? So let's start off. So I'm starting off about 45 degrees from our subject and about 20 degrees above the eye. Look about right, guys? Sound about right? Perfect. Wow, I got perfect already. So the light's not bad. Okay, let's really examine the pluses of a continuous light. What you see is what you get. Okay, we get a nice wraparound light. See the nice little triangle underneath the chin or underneath the cheek here? Very nice, a lot of definition. The contouring is nice with the shadows, it looks great. And again, what you see is what you get. We are bound by our shutter speed though. Let's take a few shots here just so you can see what's going on.
ISO 800.
ISO 800, thank you, sir. Okay, are we on manual? Yes, okay. We have the ISO set at 800 for one reason, is that we want to make sure that we have enough light. That's the one variable that we have to change from the get-go, okay? Now at this particular time, again, we're shooting manual, I'm coming in tight. And I'm at, look at my monitor, where am I at, guys? F4 at 1 over 200. Okay, F4 at 1 over 200. That's going to do two things for us. Do I like F4? What do you think, guys? No, I don't like F4. I want to be shooting more like around, let's see what we get at 5.6. Okay. Okay, now I'm at 5.6. A little over 5.6, there it is. At 5.6 at 1 over 100. Not terrible, right? 5.6 is going to do what for us? Depth of field, that's the word I want to hear. It's going to give us a greater depth of field. Sorry?
Not at that distance.
Not at that distance. Right here it will. It will be a better distance for sure.
What is the maximum aperture of your lens?
The maximum aperture of this lens is good question. F4? Yeah, it's an F4, 24 to 105. It's not going to be tac. Yeah, exactly. But 5.6 isn't bad to do a headshot with. Am I right, guys? 8 would be better. Let's see what we get at 8. I feel I'm going to hate 8. Because, again, by the shutter speed, 8 is, 1 over 60? That's not good to shoot people with it, 1 over 60. 1 over 40? Ooh, yikes. So that's what I was telling you earlier, okay? This is when a continuous light becomes limited. In order for me to get an f8, I'm shooting at 1 over 50. This gentleman's shooting at 1 over 40. That's super slow when you're shooting people, am I right? That's the downside to it, okay? And this is what really what I wanted to underline. Does this make this a bad light source? It's not a bad light source. It's just a limited light source. You got to make sure that you use it wisely and you may understand its limitations. There are some of our competitors who sell fluorescent units and they swear that you can do anything with them. Are they right? I guess for a certain sliver of photographic applications, but you're not going to shoot everything. Okay?
What's the output then?
This one right here, what do you mean the output?
Like in terms of watts.
In terms of watts, they say it's about 320 watts-ish. There's 9 lamps in there. 9 lamps at 27 watts apiece. There is a conversion for that. I don't know it off the top of my head, but I've been whipped into shape saying it's about 300 watts-ish, maybe 350 on a good day, depending. Because the fluorescent tubes are sold in 27 watts and 30 watt increments. And they're sold in the same way as far as replacing them. If you want to go to Home Depot and you want to buy a higher wattage fluorescent lamp, you're more than welcome to. Is it going to be daylight? I don't know. And that's what you're dealing with at this point. You know. Okay, so again, let's take a shot. I'm going to go back to 5.6 because 8 scares the heck out of me at 1 over 50. Let's see what we get here. .56 at 1 over 100, not terrible. Okay, just took two quick ones. Maybe hold this for me, thank you. Okay, not terrible, right? Just one light source. Just a one light source, nice contouring, nice wraparound light. Okay? Let's add a reflector. And let's add a reflector about right here-ish. That's right here. Okay, and you can see the difference right here, gang, right?
Yeah.
Look how nice that is. Hold it right there. Watch the light.
It's filled in the dark area.
Exactly. Let's take a shot.
Is that white?
That's silver on that particular side. Very nice, Christina. Okay. Okay, take a look.
What's your white balance?
White balance is probably set on auto, is it?
Yeah.
It's set on auto, yeah. Nice little, see how nice that is? Okay, super, super easy. That's one light with one reflector. Go back to the very first shot, Chris, and then compare it to the two. Or you got it right, the way you had it. I'm sorry, bro. 2.
Without reflector?
With reflector. With? Without.
Can you put up 2 at the same time?
Can we put up 2 at the same time?
5, 6, 7.
Thank you.
That's it.
That's
Wow. See, as a class, we can do a lot. All right, so you can see the difference, quite a difference. Okay?
What's the
Yes, sir.
difference between the silver and the white?
What's the
reflector?
difference between the silver and the white reflector? Essentially, think of silver as a large mirror. It tends to be a little more efficient at throwing the light back at your subject, right? White tends to be more neutral. It's not a silver mirror. Think of a chrome bumper. Remember when cars had chrome bumpers? Wow. Remember a chrome bumper in the sun? It's highly reflective. It's throwing light right back at your subject. Now, if that bumper is now of today's bumpers, a white molded plastic bumper, it's not as reflective. Okay? It tends to be more neutral, but it is definitely has reflective properties.
With the silver reflector, you also have to aim it exactly.
That's correct. That's a very good point. With the silver reflector, you have to be more cautious in aiming it at your subject matter. Also, too, it can be hazardous if you're too close to your subject. You know, if we come in too close, it becomes too flat. Let's take a shot of that. Because what happens is we're evening out the light ratios at this point. Okay? And watch how flat this monster is going to look. See, it's a little more flat, but it's not bad. Yeah, she does have great jaw lines. Yeah. It's actually hard to take a bad picture of this girl, I'm realizing. No, but it does make it more flat, less dimensional. That's what we're trying to underline here, okay? More flat, less dimensional, but it does work. If that were a classic headshot, would it work? Good enough, right? Good enough. God knows we've seen worse, all right?
Do you have a white reflector?
I do have a white reflector. Let's try that. You want to give it a shot?
Yes.
Let's do it. Okay. This is an impact. Here, I'll have you hold this. This is a 5-in-1 reflector that we make through impact, and essentially it offers you 5 different surfaces. And just like a pillowcase, you invert it. And if you have a little patience, there you go. Oop, oop, oop. There we go. Okay.
How much that run?
I don't know. I don't know. Just check the B&H website. It'll come right up. So this is why I'm giving away a white and silver reflector today, because you can see the uses of, see how potent that silver surface was? Now let's go white. Now right from the get-go, you can see quite honestly, it's not as potent, right? She almost has to come in a little bit. Boom, right there, okay. Right there, right here, Christina. Okay, look, remember how close, put the reflector back to how close you were. She was this close. What's the last shot, Chris? The one on the right? She was that close. Imagine if she were that close with a silver reflector, it would be extremely harsh. It would look 1-to-1. We're still getting some contouring from the white surface. It tends to be a little more passive. It's still reflective. We're done. Very subjective which surface you want to use. But if you need more efficiency at your subject, then go silver. If you can get away with it like we can here, go white. But you can honestly say between the silver and the white, there is a difference in the contouring of that one cheekbone, right?
You would say this is a 1 to 2?
I would say this is a 1 to 2. That's correct at this point. Yeah. Okay. We get it? Okay. Now let's jump into strobes. Okay. So give us 2 minutes. We're going to switch light sources, and we're going to start using that beauty dish.
What would have happened if we used gold color?
Oh, you want to try with gold? Let's do gold. No, you're right. It's going to warm it up, but I want him to see it. This is good.
So, from what I heard that gold reflector is good for darker.
I heard that gold reflectors are good for darker skin. That's correct, yes. It tends to be because it pulls out The thing about it is you're going to pull out the reds in that point. You want a little contrast, and the gold tends to pull out a little more contrast, for sure. But that's subjective. Again, you know, it really does boil down to what you are trying to achieve as an artist. And I hate to default to that, but that's what we're doing here. Look at the gold, okay? Again, back to the days of Monty Zucker, Dean Collins, they used a lot of gold. It's more of a style preference, entirely up to you. Very good, Christina. Okay, thank you. Ugh.
Does it
Okay.
make sense to use gold reflector with a white, when you're going with the main white light source? Like,
Does it make sense to use a gold reflector when you're going with the main light source? Take a look at the image. That's a very good example, or a good example of why you shouldn't. There's two different light qualities there. I would use gold when I am at the end of the day or at the beginning of the day. Okay, that magic hour. And that's why photographers tend to side with gold, because they're trying to mimic that magic hour at the beginning of the day or at the end of the day. Use it sparingly. That's all I can say, because it was way overused in the 80s. All right? It'll be back, I'm sure, just like everything, exactly. So we're going to come up a little bit. Give me a second here. Yeah. Okay. That's it, yeah. Wow, it's a small little modeling light. Okay, but you can see the directional quality. This is what I wanted to underline with this. The grid is giving a directional quality. It's confining the light source where we need to, okay? Drastic difference here. What a difference, right? Okay. Lack of directional quality. Look how tight that got. Boom. There's another light here hitting that background. But look at our subject. Yeah. Ah, yeah. Ooh, that's actually a nice little kicker though in the rear. It's not bad, but let's isolate the light. Okay. Okay. Again. Directional quality. Look how tight it is on her. See that? Take a look. Okay. This is a shower head, and we're directing the light. Now look at our shower head. It's everywhere. Hard to control. Okay. Let's do a shot first without the grid. All right? Okay, first rule of thumb. We're going to go about 45, which we're good. I think it should come up just a little bit, just so we can get a little different effect. Okay. Okay. All right. So we're about 20, maybe a little above the eye than we like to be. But again, this is, at this point in the game, it's a shower head. It's throwing the light everywhere. Okay. Chris, you want to give me a pop just to make sure that thing's firing? Okay. It works. Basically what we're doing there, if you have any questions, we are using the Impact PowerSync 16, which is a radio slave system. It's very much like our competitors. It allows you to fire your light sources wirelessly. And what's that?
No, it's just
oh, very good. Okay. Watch yourself, sir, please. So beyond that, we're going to start with our meter readings, okay? Once you give me the camera. No, I'm going to have my girl over do it. Okay. Thank you, sir. And give me a pop when I tell you to, okay? Okay. So the first thing I'm doing is I'm putting my flash on the flash meter reading, okay? Secondly, what I'm doing a light meter reading. Tell me what's going on here. No, exactly. Okay, good. So all of you guys would catch that. I did that at home last night in front of the mirror, and I was like, I can't do that. But I did it anyway. Okay. So again, at the light source, on our model, and Christina's used to this. Let's go. Give me a pop. Okay. We're at 8 1/3.
What did you input at first?
I'm sorry?
What did you input?
On the light meter?
Yeah.
Essentially on the light meter, all I did is I made sure that little electric arrow is firing.
Like the ISO and
The ISO is going to be 100 in this case, yeah.
250.
At 250, 1/250, because we do not want any of the ambient light affecting the meter reading. Okay. Ooh, I take it back. Good man. The ISO is actually on 400 in this case. Ah, okay. So we check it. Let's check it again. That's going to drastically change our meter reading. Give me a pop. And we're getting 4 1/3. Does Joey like 4 1/3?
No.
No, we want more light. Okay. Let's put up the light. Ooh. But this thing is maxed out, so what are we going to do?
move it in.
Or what, by moving it in is practicing what? Inverse square law. Thank you. That's what I wanted to hear. Yep. So we're moving it in a little bit. Okay. And I'm going to bring this down just a little bit because it's going to change the angle of our subject. How do I know this? I don't. I just inherently think about it. Okay, if you're moving your light a little bit and the light modifier is aimed in one direction, you kind of have to compensate for that. Do you have a question?
What's the greenish thing over there?
That greenish thing is actually a gold reflector that was used.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. And it does appear green. It's funny. Do me a favor, get rid of that image. Throw it away. There it is. That's much better. Oh, no, that's still gold. That's it. That's much better. That's a better Christina. Okay. So this isn't a bad place to start, right? You can see where the modeling light is. Now what I suggest is when you start using your modeling light on your strobe, don't trust it as though that's what the light's going to look like. It's giving us a gist where the fall of the light is going, okay? It's just a gist, all right? Just to get you in the ballpark, all right? Only because I forgot, because I'm busy talking, I'm going to take another meter reading, okay? We're at 5.6 now, right on the dot. Not terrible.
What ISO?
What ISO 100, 5.6, right on the money. It's a nice little f-stop to start off with. Let's take a shot. Now, does that mean we can set our camera for 5.6? Does that mean we can set our camera for 5.6? Well, I think we should start there. Is that going to be our primary exposure? We hope so. Is it going to work? We'll see. Okay. The shutter speed in this case, because I'm shooting inside, is going to be 1/125. Because she's not action. You know, we're not dragging the shutter for the cityscape. This is just a person. You know, it's going to catch a blink. If she does blink prematurely or whatever, it usually catches it.
No ambient light.
Essentially,
No ambient light.
The idea is to take a meter reading to adjust your camera to.
Say that again one more time.
Essentially, is it to take a meter reading to adjust your camera to the right?
The meter reading is the same thing as your speedometer in the car. It's telling us the output, our output in this case. It's telling us, for lack of better terms, the speed of the light. It's telling us the potential, the mass of light that's coming at your subject. We just metered it. We got a 4 before. We pulled the stand up a little bit closer, and now we got a nice 5.6. Right.
So the camera is fixed as the light
And
will change.
that's exactly it. Good man. So instead of changing the light, moving the model, we just moved the light physically. We didn't change the up or down of it, because in this case, this is only 160 watt second light. It only goes, it's at its full potential right now. Okay, so I mean, that's just the way it is. Okay, so I'm going to set this for 5.6, and I'm setting the shutter speed. Take a look at the monitor, guys, at 1/125. Okay, let's see what we get. Thank you, Christina. Towards me a little bit more. Shh, hold it. Give me one more second. Okay. Thanks. Okay, what do you think? Not terrible. I think it's just a drop hot though, right? It's just a drop hot. We're at 5.6 at 1/125. And you can honestly say, and please stone me if I'm wrong, we're 90% there. Right? We're 90% there to getting the shot. And all we did was do a little meter reading, move the light stand just a little bit, and what are we going to do to take off a little bit of that heat or that hot spot? Can we see the histogram?
Well, you could pan the light and take a little spill.
We could pan the light and take a little spill, but more importantly,
Dial down.
we could dial down the light. That's always the thing. Or we could just practice the inverse square law and just bring the light back a little bit.
If you were doing your own retouching, you'd also white balance.
Yeah, I would, indeed. That's correct. And she makes a good point. If I were doing my own retouching, I would also white balance. Usually what we do is we have somebody that does a white balance for us, but since this is not a real studio, we can't, you know, it's hard to get all these tools. But that's a very good point. I'm glad you said that, because white balance is critical, all right? So all I did was move it back 6 inches. Question?
Yeah, what would a retoucher want in that?
Quite honestly, a good retoucher just wants raw files. That's it. And he wants it to be sharp.
Okay, but does he care or she care about the histogram? Because at this point you're missing like a stop off the right side.
Yeah, and you know what you know why that stop off is? Because it's coming from it's right here somewhere, right? That's where I'm off. The histogram is reading that part of the frame.
It's also a JPEG.
Yeah, it's also a JPEG. Is it really?
No, what I'm saying is that on the right-hand side of the histogram, right,
yes.
the brightest side.
The brightest side. It's about to stop off. Right. Let's see what it looks like with this next shot. And all we did was we move it back 6 inches. 5-ish, maybe 6.1. Again, not an exact science here, but we're pretending. Right here. One more, give me 1 second. Okay. Okay. Moved it back 6 inches. Okay, compare that to 2 frames before that, Chris. Thank you, sir. Okay. A little more pleasing, am I right? You can really notice it on the left eye, just where the cheek is starting. It's a little more pleasing, a little more detail. It's subtle, but it's there.
It's richer.
It's more rich, that's correct. I like that. Yes, sir, question.
Experts commonly can tell between film and digital. Can you tell the difference between fixed lighting and
strobe lighting? The question is, experts can tell the difference between film and digital, which is very true, especially if you shot transparency film, and the difference between using a strobe and a continuous light. Quite honestly, if you're very good at lighting, you probably can't tell. And more importantly, if you're very good at lighting your subject matter, your art, your passion, no one can tell it's artificially lit, all right? That's your job. That's your task. You have to make a 2-dimensional plane into a 3-dimensional plane and make it seem as believable as possible. If you looked at the image on the right, you would say, the last thing you're thinking about is the artificial light. Okay? Questions? Yes, sir.
Yeah, when do you make a decision when you just say to yourself, is it hot or does she need powdering?
Good question. Wow. Now the question is it just a little overexposed or too hot, or does she just need a little more makeup? Do we need to call off the makeup artist? In that regard, you know, that happens to us a lot, I'll be honest with you. I'll go this step, moving it back a little bit. My practice is move the light back, try to get my lighting perfect. And if I still see that hot spot, then I know it wasn't me. And then we need to call in, you know, the makeup artist. Hit her with the powder, boom. And that's always an option. And if you're shooting headshots, just a bit of advice, you are only as good as your subject matter. So if you know, I do headshots. I live in Westfield, New Jersey, which is a very suburb of a suburb of New Jersey, and there's a lot of realtors in my area. And what I've done, and I've turned my living room into a very a headshot palace, if you will, for these realtors that come over on Sunday mornings and they need headshots done, and they're usually over 50 years old, and they're usually not the best posers in front of the camera, and they usually lack experience on, you know, what their good side is. So I always insist that they have to hire a makeup person, they have to hire a hair person, and please, you know, get this retouched. And I let them know from the get-go, and they see it coming up on my laptop, and they're like, ooh, I know what you mean. I know what you mean. And it's just good practice to make sure that, because otherwise, and I hate to say it, and you've all been this before, you take some great shots and they go, God, but I hate the way I look. You know, and you realize, gosh, you know, your heart and soul went into it, and all it took was maybe just a little eyeliner, makeup, maybe just curled your hair that day. That would have made a huge difference, you know. Something to think about, because you only are as good as your subject matters, whether it be the Grand Canyon or Christina, okay?
Could you say something about the focus, how your...
My focus?
Yeah.
What's focusing?
Yeah.
In what regard?
Back button fix.
No,
focus and
well, the gentleman wants to know how I focus. Nothing fancy. I use autofocus because I've been wearing contacts since I was 15, and don't have the best eyes. So I trust technology in that regard. I like everything. I like a better depth of field because that'll guarantee things that are more sharp usually. And in addition to that, I'd like to use selective focus when I am focusing, like the spot meter focus. And I usually dial into the eye. Like right now, I've just been dialing into her left eye in this case, and just trying to keep that.
You're moving the focus.
That's correct. I'm always moving the focus, continuously, yeah.
Well,
Question?
that's the same thing So you don't focus and recompose. You don't.
No, I usually don't focus or recompose unless I'm going for something that requires a lot of gutter. Like, the models on this side and there's a huge cityscape on the other side, and I'm just bound because I can't focus on anything else, and then I will. And then I tend to overshoot, just to ensure that I've covered myself.
And one more quick one. It doesn't make any sense. What I have problem is, how do you direct the eyes?
How do you direct the eyes?
Yeah, to put it in there. I don't know if that makes any sense.
That's a good question. This is what I do a lot, and people think I'm goofy for doing this. Christina, keep your nose on my hand. And that's what I tend to do, nose on my hand. See? And when I'm shooting, I tend to do that a lot. See? You see all the different looks that we're getting from her? Now, nose on my hand, keep the nose on my hand. Now, your eyes on this finger. And see what I'm doing? And that's also something to pay attention to. Okay? I learned that in the 3rd grade with my aunt, and I kid you not. Yeah, very simple procedure, but it's a good way of dictating where your subject matter is going to turn. She's got very nice shoulders, so we always want her twisted a little bit. We want an S shape out of it.
And then you direct the eyes separately.
And separately, yeah. And again, it's all very, sometimes you'll get somebody, and I never have to do that with Christina because she already knows what to do. She's a pro. But when I'm shooting real estate headshots, it's like, okay, nose on my hand, eyes on my fingers, and if I'm lucky, I can get them cross-eyed. No. No. Okay? So can we drop these lights again, Elizabeth, so we can take some shots? Okay, very good. Now, let's take a shot with a reflector. Okay? Let's use the silver side. I'm going to change it out again. That's the Impact 5-in-1 reflector. And remember, guys, I have one more to give out, so I'm trying to think of a good question for a quiz. Okay? Here you go.
No, I know.
How do you fold a reflector?
No, that'll be the question.
I'll tell you what, this is a good quiz. This will be the quiz, guys. No, that's not big enough. Let's go bigger. Okay, I will give away the next reflector to somebody. Step aside. Okay? I'm going to show you once. I'm going to show you once. Lifting it up. It's a big tongue. Okay? And then we all done a taco shell with our tongue. That's what we're going to do here. I'm creating a taco shell. Hang on, it's coming later. Whoever does that is going to walk away with the reflector. Okay?
I can do those.
Okay. Let's lose the light, Elizabeth. Thank you. Okay. I'll be honest with you, we did a video, Impact and I did a video about 3 years ago on just folding reflectors. Because the demand was so high because people are they're throwing them in the cars. Yeah, it's funny. I get calls on that. I get compliments on that. There's so many people that just don't get this. It's a very basic concept that you just saw. It's just taco shell put into itself. But we've had, I want to say, and this is an understatement, thousands and thousands and thousands of hit on that silly 2-minute video. Amazing. It's amazing.
I did it yesterday trying to fold.
Did you? Okay, see? There you go.
I still use my car visor.
Right? Okay, we have a silver reflector, and we're putting it towards Christina here. Okay, same as before. Turn a little bit towards me a little bit. That's it. Beautiful. Beautiful. Doing one more. Okay. Thank you. Okay, now all we did was add a reflector to the same shot as before. Look how nice she pops. Okay, the only thing I want is I'm going to move her face just a little bit more towards the light. You see her cheekbones? She has such accentuated cheekbones. Chris, you see where that little shadow is? Can you put the mouse up there on her cheek? That's it, right there. See? It's a little too defined. Okay, that's just me being picky. Other people say, it's fine. Let's turn you just a little bit more. Hold it. See how nice that is? Chin up a millimeter. Perfect, Christina. 1. Okay, perfect.
That's a luxury with her to be able to see chin up.
Chin up, exactly. You can see where it's defining. We're getting a little shadow from the silver reflector a little bit, but it's fine. In my opinion, this is much better than the last. The light's okay. Do you think it's a little hot?
No, I don't
Okay, all right.
Yeah, beforehand.
It feels a little hot. Now, would you agree that this is time to call in the makeup artist? It's powder. It's powder in this case, because our exposures were good before. Right. Are you a makeup artist, by the way?
Yes, I am.
I had a feeling. You can always tell a girl when she's got good eyes like that. Yep. Okay. So it's probably the powder. But we're good. Let's take a look at the histograms, Chris. So we're still off a little bit. It's fine. If it was shot in RAW, not a big deal. It's about a stop, like what you said before. Yeah, but that's inherent of this image. It could be. Who knows? All right, we're not overthinking it. Well, it might be just a little hot on the forehead a little bit. That's just it. That's where it could be. It should be. It should shift over just a little bit to the right a little bit. You know, a perfect histogram has information throughout the whole gamut there.
There's no white in the picture.
Right, right. That's exactly it. There's no white in the picture.
And it's overexposed or underexposed? Anything close to any stitch?
It's probably.
I think it looks good to me.
I think it looks fine to me too. You know, that's when, you know, again, is this when it boils down to your art? If you're happy with it and it's shot in RAW and look at the histograms, there's a lot of information there. There's no doubt.
I don't think the Instagram should be any over to the right because there's nothing that's supposed to be bright.
Right, there's no white in it, so why should it be over?
Right. It's not a matter of white, it's
Right,
brightness.
the midtones look good.
There are only midtones in that shot.
There are only midtones in that shot. And he's right. He's talking about brightness a little bit. Are we misinterpreting brightness with something being hot? Now think about that. There's two different subject matters, right? If you start analyzing it that much, hire yourself a good makeup artist. Seriously, because that's what it's boiling down to. That's going to make the difference in this shot, quite honestly. We're splitting hairs. If you have time for that, go ahead. If you're shooting for NASA, you have to. But in this case, it's good enough. It'll work. You know, my feelings are that when it comes up onto the computer, there's nothing more pleasing when you're shooting for a client and they're watching the images come up and then you get, ooh, we got the shot. Oh, that's payday and everybody feels good. It's a mission accomplished. Okay, that means you got the shot. Even though you may not like it, you may not be 100% comfortable with it, but for whom you're shooting for, if they like it, success. You're done. Mission accomplished. Let's try it with the grid now, guys. Okay. All right. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to redo a meter reading. Okay, thank you. Okay. Now on top of that monster of that camera, okay. And what I'm doing here is I'm getting on the same plane as Christina here so I can get an idea where the light is. And what I'm going to do slightly, it tends to be aiming right at her. Okay, and you can see where it's falling, right? It's right on her now, and I'm pulling it. I'm going to skirt it slightly in this direction, so it's not exactly on her. We'll see what we get. I'm hoping for a nice scraping effect. Give me a pop. Okay, that's what I want to see. I want to feel the cringe, okay? Yeah. Very good. Give me a pop. Okay. Look. Thank you. Okay, we've lost some light. We were at 5.6 before. Now we're at 2.8, okay? 2.8 and what, 0.8, which is almost f4. So we've lost over a stop, guys, right? Why? The grid, exactly. That's exactly it. Good man, exactly. So the grid is focusing the light, and before it was in all directions, so we had a little more throw of light. It was a little more, it was less efficient than it is now, because now we have more directional quality. So it's really pinpointing on our subject. Let's take another meter reading just to make sure we're not going crazy. Okay? Again, we got the same thing. So we're a full stop off. Okay, remember this light is maxed out now. Okay? Two variables we can play with. We can play with our inverse square law, and then we can move our model. Okay? In this case, we're going to play with the variable of moving our model up a little bit. So let's move you up. And we're just going to guesstimate. This is what I do. Have a seat.
Why can't we bring ISO up?
We're going to pretend this is for a client and this is going on in Times Square. And the client is watching the ISO right now. They're saying, don't touch the ISO. You know, more and more people are getting into photography and they're getting very savvy about our own trade. They're going to start watching you. They're going to start watching the monitor, especially if you let your clients see what you're shooting. They're going to start watching your practices. They're going to say, why'd you change the ISO? You know, they know these things. This is common knowledge now. And this is something that we all have to deal with. What's going to separate you from some guy who owns a 7D who bought it yesterday and you have a 7D who you've been struggling and dying to buy for the last 3 years? You know, what's going to separate you two is your vision, your talent, and more importantly, your passion. How much time you're putting into it, okay? These are things I have to underline. I know I sound like my dad, but I'm sorry. Okay. Again, look, it's right on our subject, and I'm pulling it out just a little bit. Just a little bit. Okay. And we moved Christina up, right? 6 to 8 inches. Give me a pop. We're at F4 now at 250. Okay? We should move up just a little bit. Now we're playing with 2 different variables. And look at this. Not an exact science by any means. And I'm going to lower it a bit. Good man. Okay. And see, I'm watching my light. It's just a little in front of her. How nice. And then just because I'm insecure, I'm going to bring it up 2 inches more. Okay. All right. And I don't know if you guys have noticed, what I tend to do is I always walk away from my subject, and I tend to always look at the light. And I always look at, and I'm doing 2 things here. I'm establishing a relationship with my sitter, okay? They're getting to know you, they're seeing your process. And the same way, you know, you have a sports, you know, batters go up to the plate, they kick the bat on their heels, they spit, they have a routine. This is my routine. I'm developing a relationship with my subject, and I'm looking at her at different angles. I do this with every person I shoot, okay? Just so you get a feeling for what they look like. It's your job, okay? In addition to that, I'm also looking at the quality of light that I'm getting. Let's take it, give me a pop. Very good. 4 1/3. That doesn't seem right. Give me another pop. It's 4 1/3-ish. So we might be bound by that much light because we can't get any more light out of it. So Joey has to shoot at 4. Now, does this, was that?
You don't like 4, right?
I'm not crazy about 4, but remember that image when I was in Hoboken and it was super hot and it was super sweaty and I was getting very grouchy and we had to shoot the girl in front of the water? We have to make lemons out of lemonade, or lemonade out of lemons. Forgive my French. Okay? So that's what we have to do here. We just have to make do. All right? We are control freaks as photographers. That's inherent. That's just what comes with us. This is why we like cameras, because we control it. We're dictating our exposures. But at the same time is we have to learn how to live outside the box a little bit. Thank you.
But at least when you're outdoor shots, you're shooting with ambient light.
Mm-hmm.
You can step away, which would help increase your depth of field.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. So yeah, that's a very positive attitude. So you can step away when you're outside and you will get a better depth of field. That's making lemonade out of lemons, and I like that. This is only 160 watt-seconds. That's correct. For studio, you know, I use a 12. I have a 1200 watt-second pack that I use, and in a lot of cases, if we're using more than one, you know, we'll have 2 1200 watt-second packs and unlimited amount of options. Yes, exactly. Okay, let's take a shot. Okay, very good. Okay, chin up a little bit. Very good. Very good. Chin up a little bit more. Perfect. Do one more. Okay. Thank you, sir. Look at that. Okay, let's examine this, guys. All right? And if you ask me, it's just a drop overexposed. I shouldn't have. Remember that last time I moved it up 2 inches? That's what killed it. The shot's ruined. It's awful. No. But that 2 inches made a huge difference, though, right? Okay? I'm going to move it back 2 inches, just a little bit. Okay? Now let's examine this shot. Now I moved the stand. Okay? We're going to rest there. We have a grid that we put on a beauty dish. The beauty dish grid gave us what? Directional quality, that's exactly it. And it turned out quite nice. Nice hard jaw, lovely cheekbones, very flattering shot. Okay?
Did it make the background go black?
It made the background go black. Why?
No light hitting it.
No light hitting it. Simple as that. There's no light hitting it. That's exactly it. Now let's do this. Where's that meter? And on top of that camera, give me there's a button on top of that little transmitter. Feel that button? No, not that button. There's a more, no, yeah. We don't want to turn it off. Nope. I want to show you something. Here we were getting a what? F4?
Yeah.
Give me a pop. Here we're getting an error. What does that mean? There's no light. That's what happened. There's no light on our background. See, so that's depending on fall off. If this were a white background, you think we'd get an error as well? Maybe, maybe not. But it would be gray. Maybe shifting to black at some point. Okay? All right. Let's take another shot with the stand moved 2 inches. And I'm going to do something even crazier. I'm moving it a whole inch, guys. Okay. So I moved it about 3 inches from this original shot. Let's take another one. Same as before, Christina. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Very good. One more. Thank you. Okay. A little bit better. Am I going crazy? Yes. It's just minute, right? Compare the two, Chris. Thank you, sir. Just a subtle difference. And you know what? Probably the first shot was probably best, right? Yeah. So there you go. There you go. I mean, it's very subtle. We're talking about 2 inches, maybe 3 inches moving the light. But it does make a little bit of difference. She may have moved a little bit too. Remember, she could have leaned in a little bit. That could have made a difference, you know? So these subtle things make a little difference. There's a subtle difference between the two, and that's what we're trying to underline, okay? What are we talking about?
No, that's directional.
The grid?
No, the light is directional, right? You don't have a flash on that, do you?
This is a flat.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, this is a flat. This is the flash unit. Just to make you know, if you're not sure what's going on here, this is the flash unit, and this is nothing but a light modifier. Simple as that. Okay. The engine, whether it's a convertible or a coupe, I don't know. You know, it's just another accessory to your vehicle, if you will. Okay. Let's do it with the reflector. Okay, same shot as before, and we're adding a little reflector fill. Okay, now it's kind of hard to see where the light needs to be done. So when in doubt, we're going to start at 45 degrees from our subject, okay, just so we're safe. And if I could have you move back just like 2, that's perfect right there. Very good. Okay, guys. Boom. Perfect. Thank you, Christina. 1. I'm going to do something a little bit more. That's it. Hold it. Okay. Thank you. Okay. It's the last 2 that we want to look at. And probably the last one, in my opinion. Yeah. So the little reflector fill did quite a bit. And you can see it primarily in the hair. Right here. Right? In the hair, it added some detail. It's flattering, it works. Is it my favorite? No, but it got us in the ballpark. Now, more importantly, let's count the number of frames that she is shot just with the grid, okay? So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We took exactly 7 shots from 0, not knowing our f-stop, not knowing our exposure, to actually getting a shot that we're happy with. That's 7 frames. That's all it took, is 7 frames for us to go from 0 to get a shot that we like. Okay? How did we do this? Moving the light. What helped us get there? A light meter. Thank you. A light meter. Okay? It was 1% of this equation to get the shot. But look how it only took us 7 frames to get the shot because of our tools. Okay, and this is what I'm trying to underline. Am I attached to that light meter? Not really. Do I need it? You better believe it.
Joey, if you didn't have the light meter,
If I didn't,
dead on.
if my light meter, I would probably jump off a cliff. No, you know what? You'd have to use your savvy in that regard. In this point, you use your histograms. You have to use the tools that's available to you in this case. You know, as a kid, I used to build forts as a kid. Growing up in Arizona as a kid, I used to build forts. I don't know if you guys built forts as a kid, but my dad would never let us play with his tools. So when we didn't use his tools, we used a rock. We used a butter knife. You use the tools that you have around you. And in this case, it's going to be your histograms. It may be the internal light meter in your camera to get the ambient that you may need. You know, use the tools that you have at hand.
Would you start at the program, the P button, and then see where you go from there?
I've never shot in P or auto or anything like that, or T or no. I don't know. I don't know. Me personally, no. But why not?
Yeah.
Why not? Yeah. So that's probably maybe a good method. I've never even thought about that. I've always thought about it's got to be tough. It's got to be rough. No. Go ahead.
If you had switched lenses, let's say, and you switched to a 70 to 200, then you stepped back.
Yes.
Like
Would that change my f-stop or my exposure?
It should change it.
It would definitely change it. It would change it a little bit.
Do you like remeter at that point because it's not going to change the light incidence?
It doesn't change the light at that point. That's correct. The gentleman made a good point. If you change your lens, let's say we went from a 70 to 200 right now, and we're standing back. That's a lot of glass to shoot through. Okay. Primarily, yes, it's going to change your exposure. Is it going to be drastic? It's not going to be drastic, but at that point what you need to do is I would do two things. Your light's not going to change, but I would definitely remeter. It's just me. I'd go back and then find the difference between the two. So it'll allow me to know that when I'm shooting with my 70 to 200, I'm looking at my monitor, I finally get the shot that I want, I write these things down. So when I step back with my 70 to 200, I know what f-stop to start off with. And that's why I would remeter at that point. I'd have one of my guys say, when you're shooting with the 24 to 105, you're shooting at this exposure at 1/125 or whatever. And when you're shooting with the 7200, you need to shoot at that exposure because it will shift. That's a lot of glass, you know. And I don't think we do enough bookkeeping since we started shooting digital. I know when I was shooting transparency film, every shot was cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. And when you're 23 years old and you have no money and you've already got 3 jobs, you know, every Polaroid that you're pulling is money. You had to really, really think about every shot at that point. Every shot took a toll. We wrote down everything. We journaled everything. I used to get every Polaroid from every shoot that I ever went on, whether it was assisting or my own jobs, and then write down the exposures and put down the diagrams of the lighting, just so I had a gist of it, because it's documented. We're not doing enough of that these days, I feel as though, because digital allows us to do boink, boink, boink. I got it, and then, you know, you're fine. There's something to be said about putting your words into a journal, because this is your hard copy of your growth, okay? That's what I'm trying to underline. Sounds corny, practice it, I guarantee you'll make you better photographers. Yes?
When you said you put the 7200 and you step back, you would definitely remeter.
I would.
Why?
Even though the light's the same, the gentleman made a very valid point. The light's the exact same, but for me, it's about procedure. It's redoing the procedure for a different lens and a different focal length. And that's to underline that. It's just me following what Joey does best, you know, gets up, brushes his teeth, goes for a walk, runs from the dog down the street, you know.
I don't understand. You don't change anything on the meter.
I know. It's just procedure. It's procedure. It's a process. There's a lot of things we do because we're nuts. And believe me, I've worn a lot of white coats in my day. No. No, it's just a procedure, that's all. I think it's important to follow your own process.
But you did make some tweaks since the original meter reading, so that...
Yeah, exactly. And that happens. That happens. And you make a very good point. Nothing's changed, but it's about following your own process.
You want to remeter occasionally.
I always remeter when the subject matter tends to move, or we're changing, for instance, they're changing outfits, costumes, makeup's change. It's a different subject matter. You know, it's just to make sure that you're consistent throughout.
Would you mind doing the same shot with another lens?
Do we have another lens here? A 7200?
No, we don't. Do you want one?
You have one.
51.4.
You got a 51.4? No, let's use that long one. Can we? Did you mind, sir?
Yes.
thank you. It's a bad joke. Been doing that forever. Sorry, buddy. I didn't take off the lens here. Exactly, yes. All right. I'll trade you. Oh, I was going to say very good. Thank you, sir. Okay. I'm glad you mentioned that. Good man. Okay. Because Joey's out of his mind.
It's not going to reach. The tethered cable is not going to reach.
Oh, the tethered cable won't reach.
Go back a little bit, but not very much.
We'll go back a little bit, but it is different glass. Okay. All right. First thing we're going to do is we're going to pop it. Why don't you give me press that button? Give me a second here. Okay, very good, guys. Okay. Again, we're getting an F4. Okay, so we're happy with that.
So what is your preferred lens when you do?
I like the 100-2.8L that just came out. That's a sweet lens for a headshot. And then I primarily, if I don't know what I'm shooting and I'm shooting, yes, yeah, and it compresses the shot just enough for me. And 100-2.8L macro, it's a beautiful lens, great glass. I had the old one in the past, and I still have. I'm trying to get rid of it if anybody wants it. But if I preferred, if I had one piece of glass and I was stranded on a desert island, it'd be the 24-70. Yeah. It's just a tack sharp lens. You can get super wide, and if you have to, you have to move your feet a little bit at times. Some people say the 28-105 is much sharper, but I don't know. I think these are tools again. I think these are tools.
I got two questions.
Yes, please.
One, what's a Polaroid? No,
oh, what's a Polaroid?
When she's holding the reflector,
yes.
I know she's holding it at an angle as opposed to straight up.
Mm-hmm.
Why?
Angle of incidence equals angle of reflection.
Okay.
What the gentleman said is the angle of incidence is the angle of reflection, which is another way of saying that is, in layman's terms, is I always have the reflector opposite end of my main light source, and I always reflected back at it. You know, like when you were a kid and you had your watch and you used to shine in somebody's eyes? That's all you're doing here, okay? Or ants, yes, exactly. You're just aiming it right back at your subject. And every subject matter is different. Sometimes you can pull away. And if you're in doubt, come in, come far, come far, come far. Go to white, go to silver, go to gold, try it all. Because you need to document, you need to get a palette of what you're working with. Let's get this shot as far as we can. Okay, again, thank you, sir. F4, 1/125. Get your foot here. Okay. Chris, you want to give me a... It's going under the stand. It's going under. There you go. Can you guys give him a hand here?
If you can
Yay, Chris. Yay. Thank you. See? That's right. That's fine, sir. It's more than I expected. Wow. Yeah. Yeah, it is going to be tight. Okay. It's at 70. Oh, 70 is not too bad. Okay, this isn't terrible. Okay, same exposure. F4 1/125. Let's see what we get. Ooh, it's bouncing around. That's when you need a focusing light. It's bouncing around big time on me. Give me a second here. Ooh. Okay. Okay, let it come up. That's it right there. Pretty darn close. Pretty darn close. I still think it's a little over, though. Is it the same exposure? Go back one frame and compare the two, Chris.
It's the same.
Same as that one, maybe.
Hold on.
That's a different one.
It's the same exposure.
It's pretty darn close. Okay. All right. I think if I increase the focal length a little bit, it would make a little bit of difference. The gentleman makes a very good point. I'm glad you mentioned that about the lens selection. Because a lot of us tend to do that. I tend to stick, when I shoot something, I stick with one lens for continuity. Because if you start bouncing around on a client, you give them, you know, I love this 2.8 stuff, but, you know, it's pretty, but we need everything in focus. But look how cool it is. At this point in the game, there's a subtle difference between the two. It's almost nothing, you know, it really is. And I think it has a lot to do with the focal length I'm shooting at. I wish I had a little more distance, though.
Do you always shoot tethered?
Do we always shoot tethered? Not every time, no. When we're out in the sticks, we don't. We're in the studio, yeah, you have to. Yeah, for the most part, yeah.
And the remote to trigger your lights is what?
That is the Impact PowerSync 16, which is nothing more than a radio transmitter that goes on your camera, and it communicates with a receiver that is hooked up with a small cable to your sync connection on your...
To any flash.
To any flash, that's correct. Yeah.
Any idea how much it costs?
I believe B&H sells it for about $150-ish. I don't know.
But you can't change the...
That does not control the output of the light source. It only triggers the light. It has one mission.
There's somebody else that does that?
Profoto, Broncolor, I do know that they allow you to... Hensel as well, that's correct. They allow you to divvy the power within the unit. Quite a nice feature if you don't want to move your feet. But sometimes you don't want to move your feet. Sometimes you have to move the stand. And that's when that doesn't come in. You know, and that's what happens. We want to use our remote now, 99% of the time. And you're bouncing around between exposures.
So it's not worth the extra money for you?
For me, no, because I've already invested in my lighting equipment some years ago. And I'm beyond teaching new tricks, beyond digital at this point.
Starting today?
Starting today, the only thing I want to learn is I want to learn more about digital as far as, you know, Lightroom and all that.
Buying
equipment?
Remote or...
No, I already have I have Pocket Wizards that I use and I love, and they work fine. I've had them over 15 years now. And it's lasted longer than all the cameras and computers that I've owned thus far. Same thing with my Profoto and Broncolor kits. I've had those kits well before Arizona, you know, and I was staying with a guy in Mexico City, and that's when I bought my first Profoto kit, and I still have it. Lasted longer than all my film cameras, digital cameras, and computers, okay? These are wise investments. Did I know then what I was investing in? Not really, but I do know that if I bought very good equipment that's not going to be outdated. Remember, gang, what is photography? It's light and focus. Buy good lighting, buy good glass. Okay, if you're going to stay within the system, buy good glass. I have some very good Canon glass that I hang on to, but I don't own a camera, you know, because they change too often. I either rent, lease, beg, or steal. Questions, guys?
A point about, I'm just getting into Lightroom, and you're tethering. Doesn't Lightroom throw like 50% brightness on your, you know what I mean?
No. I don't. No, what are you trying to say?
I know when I shoot and I look at the information on.
No, I'm going to put it back on the camera.
The brightness won't be at 0. It'll be already pushed up to 50.
Thank you.
Know, does that make a difference?
It's supposed to be at 50. That's why.
It's supposed to be at 50. It's not supposed to be at 0.
So that you can adjust it after.
Yes.
So you're trying to simulate the look of a finished JPEG. That's what that's 25 contrast, 25 sharpness, 50 brightness.
So it makes adjustments for you, so you have the image.
That's exactly it. And that's essentially what a JPEG is. It's a processed image. That's essentially it. The question is, and forgive me if I word it wrong, is how do you compensate for the image that comes up? Or
basically, how do you, I'm not even saying it right. Lightroom is making adjustments for you, and I don't want it to make adjustments.
Lightroom is making adjustments for us.
And I don't want it to make adjustments for
and you don't want it to, then you shoot in RAW.
I want it to be, yeah, I'm going to shoot at RAW, but when I look at my image on the screen, I see a processed.
You see a processed image, a semi-processed image. You know, I don't know. Again, what does Joey do again? I do light and focus. I'm not a digital tech. I'm not a plumber. I'm not a hair makeup person.
You can make a preset and, you know, make everything default.
And the gentleman underlines that you can do a preset.
Actually, when you're inputting your images,
yes.
have it set, you know, depending on the preset, you know.
That's a whole other class. I would check the event space calendar because I know there's some guys in here that know Lightroom very well. The import settings? Okay. Let's take a shot of a 3/4 catalog shoot, okay? Let's get up. Okay, first thing I do is I'm not moving the stool. Why? That's your spot. That's your mark. You know, that's where our light has been measured from. So Christina, right here. And I'm not being too exact, but I'm being kind of exact. Models often freak out. I'm like, don't move, you know, because you worked so hard getting those meter readings. You know, you don't want them to scatter too far. Now, we're going to lose our grid, okay? we're going to pull this out. Okay, we want to light a little bit more of our subject. Very good. Thank you. What my good assistant here did is she put a mark down, which is always key. Tape should always be on the floor when you're shooting subjects. Yeah, whether it's a real estate, whether it's a baby, whether you're shooting a senior portrait, always mark your spot, because otherwise you're having to do your homework again. And beyond that, they're not working professionals who are used to staying in one spot. Okay, and I'm putting this up a little bit, and I'm just going to pan it out. Now look what I've done here. We got Christina here, and the light is actually aiming right at me, so it's slightly in front of her a little bit. I want some of its inefficiency behind the beauty dish, just a little bit. Okay, and again, if this were a shower head, it's still going to hit her. It's just not going to hit her full blast, right? Okay, so I'm depending on some of the scatter, some of the side of the light to light her. It's actually hitting right here, but we all know it's actually hitting her as well, right? Okay, and we'll see what that looks like. Let's take a shot. Okay. Thank you, thank you. Now, what's the first thing that we should be doing right now?
Measure the light.
Thank you. Because why? We moved the light. We changed the light modifier. We're no longer using a grid. Thank you. Okay. Let's take a meter reading.
No.
Okay. You guys got that down. Oh, I didn't get a meter reading. I didn't pop it. Okay, one more time. 5 6 1/3-ish. Okay. Okay. 5 6 1/3-ish. Okay. Give me a pop. Let's do a third-ish. Let me see here. What didn't change? Okay. And again, we're doing this from scratch, guys. And you see how subtly I'm moving the light source. 5 6 and almost 2/3. I'll deal with that for the moment. Okay? 5 6 and almost 2/3. I'm going to try 1 at 8, and then we'll see what that looks like. Okay? Give me an S. Give me a hard S. There you go. That's it. Very nice. Okay. These guys do this chord. Okay. Very good. Now a 3/4 shot, quite honestly, should end right here. If you go below the knees, you got to get the whole leg. Just rule of thumb. Otherwise, they're going to look like they were born like that way. Okay? She's going to look like she was stumpy. All right? 3/4 shot. All right? Just below the hands, just to fill in the void a little bit. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go a little more low to high on her. Thank you, Christina. Chin up a millimeter. A little bit more. Hold it. Okay. What did we shoot this at? Oh, I think I didn't change my f-stop. I'm at f4. I'm way over. Let's change it. Thanks, guys, for reminding me. Jeez. We said 5 6, and we metered at close to 8, right?
Correct.
Okay. So we got 5 6 and 3/4 on this meter reading. Okay? I'm setting it to 8 at 1/125. We right, Chris? Mm-hmm. Very good. Give me more of an S, just a little harder. Boom, that's it, that's it. Beautiful. Okay. Here we go. This is much better. Okay, not terrible, right? What does it need, guys? Ah, thank you. Let's give her a little fill, a little reflector fill. Now, is this big enough? No, we got a bigger one here.
Yeah.
See, this says we're either white. We're going to go with the white because we want a little more passive, okay? Now, it tends to be a little more neutral. Now, remember, when you're shooting full length of this sort, you're going to need a larger reflector, all right? It's inherent. So get it. This is when V-flats would be extremely helpful. Make a very good point. They're cheap, they do the job, and more importantly, they're going to fill in the gap. Let's have you about right here. And see what I'm doing here? Like the gentleman mentioned in the back. Angle of incidental light is the angle of reflection, okay? It's hitting the reflector, boink, boink. When in doubt, think of water. It's a shower head, okay? She's getting doused right now. Let's take another shot. Let's fill it in. Okay, same as before. Nice pose. Very good. Chin up a little bit. Beautiful, Christina. Thank you. Much better. Much better. Go back one. Can we compare the two, Chris? See how nice it filled in? Look at the arm. Total difference. Look at the shadowing underneath the arm right here. Much different. That's a one light setup, gang. Now, if this were a real studio, we would have her at least another 4 feet away from the background. Why? The shadow, exactly. And that would be a very pleasing shot. And what would happen with the background, which is kind of cool if you notice, we're getting a gradation factor. The light's falling off kind of, it would be a nice little separation. So what we're witnessing here is one light, one reflector. If my choice, if we could bring her up another 4 feet, we'd be in heaven.
What would you do?
One more.
So what would you do to get rid of the shadow under the hands?
Under the hands?
Yeah.
Just use a reflector fill. At this point, I would, you know, this is very common too, where a lot of people tend to shoot this way. Let's do another shot this way. Let me get you stand over here. Oh, there you go. You got it? Mm-hmm. Okay. This is very common as well. The only downside is we're losing our 3/4 shot at this point. Let's drop it just a drop below the hands because we want to get the hands in the shot. That's it. That's it. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Okay. Boom. And again, what you see there is a very common technique. I did this in college with, again, aluminum foil that I'd crush up, put on a cardboard piece of board, and then put it like that. Watch the difference here. Okay. Same as before, Christina, right here. Chin up a little bit. Perfect. Thank you. One. I'm going to do one more. Okay. And the shadow disappeared a little bit, but I wish we were using reflector. You can see, definitely see how it's diminished it, right? It's getting not get rid of it completely, but it has lessened it. If I had a choice, we'd be using silver, but the silver one's tucked away already. Does that answer your question? Good. When in doubt, use silver though. I do like the expression on her face on the second shot. It's nice.
Silver would make her waist too bright?
No, I don't think so. We're trying to get rid of the shadow on the hands from the shadow from the hands. You know, I don't think it would because we're dealing with gray. If she were wearing white, then we'd be into issues. If she were a blushing bride, it'd be an issue.
No, I asked a lot of questions.
No, it's fine. Questions are good.
Can I see what you see when you stand there? Can I stand?
Can you stand right here?
No, when you're looking at the light from.
You want to come up here? I'll tell you what. Before we do that, this class technically ends in 10 minutes, and I turn into a pumpkin. Okay, but beyond that, thank you so much for coming today. I invite you to come up and look at the stuff. If you have any questions, comments, please email me. I will gladly email you the PDF version of this class. In addition to that, if you have any questions about lighting products, what we did in this class, or anything specific, email me and I'll be more than happy to get a hold of you. Thank you so much for coming, guys, and come up, okay?
For more information, please visit us online, give us a call, or stop by our New York City Superstore. You can also connect with us on the web.